All right, all right. We are live here at MythVision Podcast. We are MythVision. Thank you to everybody who's showing up. Let's get the party started. Welcome back, everybody. MythVision fans, friends, those who are on this journey with me. I hope you're enjoying your Sunday. And I'm the host, Derek Lambert. I wanted to come on, hang out with you, and tell you the real reason why I started to doubt Jesus, right? I didn't say doubt Christianity. I wanted to make it personal. I wanted to put the figure, the person, Jesus, that I had this personal relationship with, and why I started to doubt Jesus. I wanted to make that very clear in the title. But also, we might have some guests who pop on as we go along today. And if they do, they do. If they don't, they don't. That's okay. I really want to emphasize something that we all can share. We live inside our heads, right? It's going to be common sense stuff that I really want to make clear for anybody who's watching. Each of us lives in our own heads, and that is our world. And everything matters in our world to us. So when we're looking at scripture that we're taught, we believe it applies to us in some way. Well, the first century Jews and the first century Gentiles who may have been joining this cult, they thought the same thing. Everything's about them. And the church for 2,000 years said, this is about us. Sometimes they were a little more sophisticated than others, and they realized, well, some of that stuff already happened, and it's about that time then. But most of the time, even the interpretations we see in the New Testament, they're looking at the Septuagint, really, if you're looking at the New Testament. I always say Hebrew Bible, but in fact, it's the Greek Septuagint, which is, that opens up a whole discussion of what do I mean, and why does that matter? Well, it matters. It matters big time. They're in the Greek, a lot of the words take on their own connotations and different meanings. So you can see why the New Testament authors run with certain interpretations. But the point I'm getting at is they're looking at their scriptures and saying, why does this matter for me? Today, right now, I bet you people in Ukraine are looking at the Bible, the ones that are Christians, and saying, how does this matter for me? And in what way is this talking about what I'm going through? Because everything matters to us on what we are going through. The most difficult problem I had as a Christian was finding out how something mattered to them and had no relevance in any literal sense to my context. Like Jesus says, see these stones right here, looking at the temple? Not one stone will be left upon another that will not be cast down. Look, these are the signs. I'll tell you the signs. Mark 13, and then, of course, Matthew and Luke are using Mark. But they're talking about the temple's destruction. Now, one could say, analogy-wise, well, look at what happened in 9/11. I see there's this cataclysmic event, and what do we do in these troubling times? But no, Mark 13 has nothing, I repeat, nothing to do with us today. So, as a Christian, I didn't want to say some of these scriptures had nothing to do with us. That was the hardest thing to do, was find out something didn't really matter to me. It wasn't applying to my time. And that was a certain tool, or I guess you'd say a tool in my handy pack that was very difficult to do at first. And I realized all the church was using this as applying it to them or reinterpreting things to make it matter for us. Revelation, and the locust will come, one of the plagues. Those are helicopters, and Russia's going down to invade Ukraine, and the helicopters look like locusts. And I mean, you see what I mean? Like, everything matters to us. So how is this relevant to me? This was the problem, that once I started to realize, hold on, this applies to someone else in a different time, started to really, really cause me to think, why is the church not seeing this? And I had to try and remember how I thought about scripture as I started to delve into using this tool that partial preterists use. People like, if you remember R.C. Sproul, he was a Reformed pastor. He was one of those people. Kenneth Gentry, Gary DeMar. These are these partial preterists, very conservative, Reformed type Christians. I was in that school for a couple years. So, all right, before I move on and continue into like what happened to me, and of course, I'd like to hear what happened to you. I want to get to the chat here. First, give recognition. Chris said, we are MythVision. Chris, 10,000 myth points. I'm feeling generous today, man. You got myth points, myth money, myth crypto, whatever the heck you want to call it. But when you get to the pearly gates, you can cash in, my friend. So Robert Heron, man, 5,000 myth points to you, my friend. Oh, man, it ditched my earlier chat. Don't know where that went. And Nidimus, thank you so much for the top 3. Nidimus, you get 2,500 points. So half of your body will make it into heaven. The other half, if you build up your points, you could probably get your whole body into heaven. This is kind of like what we're looking at is the Zoroastrian idea of hell, or even like purgatory, where it burns off your sins. You know, you might make it in there, my friend. Thank you for being here early. So we got a super sticker from Jason Anderson, man. Thank you so much for the support, Jason. It's good to see you. The other night, of course, seeing you in the chat over at my friend History Valley, Jacob Berman. Jacob blew my mind the other night. He brought M. David Litwa and Dr. Robert M. Price on the same platform, and they had a conversation about second century Christianity and Gnosticism and you name it. You got to go check that interview out. I loved it. Seriously. Topic discussed. Gary says, I'm here to hang out with you, bro, live. Thank you so much for the super chat, Gary, and it's good to see you here, man. Thank you for the support and, of course, the love. Everybody in the chat here. Someone said, I have no idea when I started to doubt. I would say I always had doubt. Robert had doubt. Just getting through here. Robert, maybe you're closer to my experience. Melody said, I thought I was late, just started. Good day, folks. Changed my life. Dean Martin said, I think it's Dr. Bob and the Infidel Guy podcast. Non-believer. Nancy, no one at church would answer questions regarding things like who wrote the scriptures? Why would God only have Jews as chosen people? Oh, these are good questions to ask, of course, especially if God is like literally the omni of everything. Steven Sorensen, yo, what is up, man? CM said, I started to doubt when I got into ancient Egyptian history and read the Bible like it was a fairy tale book. Tim said, hey there, Derek. Looking forward to hearing your story. Mine is due to the fact that God didn't change me to be straight, then discovered all I knew was pretty much fable. Wow. Paul and Jesus don't preach the same salvation. That got my doubting ball rolling, MythVision. Interesting melody. Why do pastors cherry pick? Joel Pearson said, once you realize the church lied to you about one thing, it opens the floodgates to doubt everything. Yeah, that's a very interesting point, and that's exactly where I was leading into with this whole how this matters to us. The church makes everything matter to them, and they dodge these tough, difficult questions. And you have these apologists, for example, Jonathan McClatchy, he posted on Twitter. Let me see if I could find this. He has a hotline for doubting. Call a professional because a professional will help you with your doubts and stuff. Like, they are literally having doubt hotlines now, all because, well, people are doubting and they have every right to be doubting. There's a lot that needs to be discussed. And apologetics is to be this tool to try and make those problems not problems anymore. And they do more damage, in my opinion, and it seems more dishonest in many of these approaches than they do good. And so there are a couple Christians who are titled apologists who know why I think the way I do, and I respect them and they respect me. But at the end of the day, they go, you know what? I see what you're saying. I see the problem. Now there's others who won't even talk to me. I've sent out emails to try and help out with this recent debate that's coming up with Dr. Bart Ehrman and Mike Licona. And man, the responses, I could almost taste the I'm not trying to be involved with anything you do type of emails that have come back from some of the Christian apologists that I've tried to get in contact with. And others were extremely polite in their responses back, but I think they might know who I am. Don't know. Anyway, moving on. Politics and religion must be about fairness for everyone. Everything happens for a reason. Worst phase ever. All right, let me get down here. We got some super chats. Praise the hairdo. What would Jesus do? Hallelujah. Troy Miller, thank you for that super chat, man. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate the love, the support, being here, always showing love this way. Helps me keep going. This month's been a slow month with the YouTube algorithm. I don't know what's going on. Channel's really slowed down this month, but I've also been working on a lot of other stuff as well. So maybe it's my own lack of omniscience and awareness that might be that way. So howdy, Derek. The flying spaghetti monster was boiled for your sins. I'm not doubting anything, Dara Light said. Reg, I'm going to say Reg. Butcher your name. I'm so bad about butchering and pronouncing things. I already just accept my fate that will be why I'm punished in the afterlife. So it's okay. It is what it is. Grew up as a PK and love your show. What's a PK? I'm interested in knowing. Any chance of having an episode on Second Temple era Samaritans? You betcha. I definitely want to get into something like this, but I want to get an academic who particularly knows and specializes in this. It's difficult, man, because when you get into some of this stuff, you're borderline almost tempted to get a Samaritan themselves to come on and explain what they believe, right? And I want to do that, but I also want critical thinking involved because there's always this bias that comes from everybody. And when it comes to critical, at least you're dealing with data that isn't ignored or facts of problems that might be there in the text. It's rare to find people of faith. And I'm not saying they're not out there. There are plenty out there. It's just rare to find them be as critical as you can be. I mean, you're protecting what you believe, right? That's typically what happens. But I am interested in finding out that split and what's going on, the traditions for Samaritans and, of course, the Jews. That went all the way down into the first century. There was literal problems. Josephus talks about skirmishes between Samaritans and Jews, which might make sense why Luke is talking about a good Samaritan, trying to get Jews who are having problems with these people to see that some of the Samaritans are acting indeed better than they are in some ways. So Sid Dave, thank you for the super chat. If Jesus was really resurrected, he should have made an appearance to Emperor Herod and Pilate. Christianity would have been the state religion right from 33 AD rather than 300 years later. Man, that is a great point. That is a really good point. Why doesn't he appear to all of the enemies who absolutely killed him? And then we get into having the Roman soldiers at the tomb who would have witnessed maybe this resurrection, right? And they're paid to be silent. The most extravagant, like the greatest event in history gets, just tossed to the side. Why? Because they weren't Christians, according to the biblical story, especially when you're dealing with that particular gospel. And you go, what the heck, dude? Why, if they saw that, would they be a sellout? Wouldn't they have gone to die for what they witnessed? I don't know. You can always come up with an excuse for why they wouldn't, but he doesn't appear to all the enemies. The only guy that really comes up on the scene is saying that they saw this Jesus risen is Paul. And we have no reason to think he knew of Jesus in his own life at all. If anything, the contrary. So, it makes more questions than answers, but this is a great point. And I'm a doubting Thomas myself, right? Like, not saying I'm looking for Jesus at every turn. Like, come on, show up and teach me. But my point is I even think the doubting Thomas story needs to be doubted, and it's there as an apologetic to convince people, listen, Jesus isn't going to appear to you and show you his wounds like he's doing to Thomas right now. So make sure that you believe, because greater is he who believes and does not see. Here's the lesson. You're not going to see, but believe. And then you're going to get your reward for that. So make sure you believe in things that you don't see and have the faith in this lesson we have in this text. That's what it seems to me is going on. Sid, thanks so much. Cowboy 1000, thank you so much for that super chat. Watching debates about the resurrection, doubts got worse from there. For me, I used to ignore the other side and only look at William Lane Craig's argument and be like, he kicked the butt out of that atheist, man. He did amazing against that guy. And once you go back and rewatch these debates and actually listen to what the other side is trying to say, and then factor in all sorts of other background knowledge that the apologist is trying to ignore, that's when it starts to change the game. Like the debate that happened between Dr. Robert and Price and William Lane Craig. I did not like Dr. Bob back in the day. I've said this to him. He was at my house 2 days ago. Like, we're doing a recording for online lectures, and that I'll make sure I mention that when that comes out. But I did not like him because he was against Christianity, or at least he taught things that went against my faith. And when I finally started to wake up, which took a long time of deconverting, if you will, deconstruction, however you want to call it, I started to realize, whoa, he's talking about these other figures who died and rose or ascended on high and all this. I never knew about this stuff as a Christian. Why aren't we at least focusing on that more? And I think being the fact that apologists don't talk about it, only want to undermine the stories of Romulus and Remus, which are fascinating stories. Why aren't we going out there talking about all these other amazing Apollonius of Tyana and these things? And when I started to pay attention to them more, I realized on the other side that the light started to change to the other side, and I started to be optimistic about the doubting side. I found more life enjoyment in not knowing and lowering my confidence in this belief system that I had and broadening my consciousness to see a bigger world. That is what happened for me. I started to go, whoa, listen to what Dr. Robert and Price said. Mine was blown from there. Thank you so much, Cowboy. Really appreciate that support. I'm just scrolling down here, trying not to miss anything. Ben Stanhope, JS said, Ben Stanhope, MA thesis was about royal Israel sills depicting Egyptian gods like Ra and Horus. Could be interesting to talk about. Yeah, I'm close. I could message him anytime to make that happen. Email me to remind me, because I'm busy. Like, it's ridiculous. The stuff I do, I'll forget by the time we're done with this episode. Learning in college, real quick. Learning in college about the background of text and their own milieu and focus of time, I think it is, via textual criticism made me appreciate the Bible infinitely more than ever seeing it as supernatural. Abso-freaking-lutely. Yes. I mean, sure, I didn't have the same devotional aspect to the biblical text. It wasn't about a devotional, but it was about stories. I watch, Iron Man. I know it's fictional, but there's lessons there that I pick up on that I enjoy. And I really enjoy watching fictional stuff or reading things that might be legendary and whatnot. And you gain something from it, but it's not like I literally, historically, God, I thank you that you actually spit Jonah up on the third day from the belly of that fish that went down to the depths of the ocean. What? Yeah, big problem. All right. Blue Green, thank you so much for the super chat. Hi, Derek. I contacted Fishers of Evidence. He seems happy to do an interview with you. Check out his latest video comments where I chat with him. I will. I actually emailed him too. I think you were the last person who told me that I need to email him. So I emailed him back, and I didn't get an email back. Not that I was that I see. So I have contacted him via email before about doing interviews, and he's a sharp guy. Like, he really goes into detail about a lot of stuff. So yeah, as well, if you would email me, all that's in the description. Derek, here, I'll type it out just so everybody has it. MythVisionPodcast.com. So here's an email that you can get a hold of me at, and maybe you want to CC him in on it as well, so we can really make this happen, because he hasn't responded, and if he has, it probably went into, what do you call that, the junk mail section or whatever? Yeah, something like that. Danny Sanchez, thank you for the super chat. I started losing faith because I heard the dishonesty of apologists and was scolded for refusing to hate gays. Wow. Yeah, the dishonesty part's big. And scolded for refusing to hate gays. That's pretty tough. That is a really, really bad thing. It sounds like a very conservative sect of Christianity that you were a part of, and I've been there. I don't know if they would call it hate, right? They would try to tone it, paint over it with a different word. Like, hey, we got to let them know we don't condone these things. I had a best friend, actually, who I thought all my life was definitely into men. And he finally came out and he got married. I didn't know anything about it. I called him one day because we were both in some radical fundamentalist house church. And he's like, hey, D, he didn't really want to go there. And I said, bro, listen, I love you, man. And I'm proud of you. I hope you're happy. And of course, his mom said that he had demons in him and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember all of that like it was yesterday. But thank you for telling us, some of the reasons. Not all reasons are the same. And of course, the real reason, right? Everybody knows the real reason why I doubted in you and everybody. Because we want to sin. Duh. Because we want to be the most wicked we can. And that's the real reason. If you're a Christian watching this, of course, and you don't take that position, I'm not talking about you. I'm speaking to more radicals, of course. David the Goliath, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for that 10. I really appreciate that support. Jesus should have made an appearance to Mo, and Mo would have become a Christian, and Islam would have never existed. Jesus always makes appearances to wrong people at the wrong time. Laugh out loud. Oh, man. It is convenient that what we have is, we don't have any other sources. If we had sources about Paul from enemies of Paul during Paul's actual time, that'd be great. But often in apologetic arguments, how often have you heard them make an argument within the biblical text of saying, well, he did have opponents. In Acts chapter 6, it's like, no, you're in the same text. This book we call Acts is literally written to convince you. It's not written as like, by the way, and Bob, let me give you an unbiased account about Bob. Bob actually is a liar, and here's why. No, they're writing propaganda. It is to convince you Jesus is true. So we don't have anything else. Even if you believe in Jesus and the resurrection, shouldn't this at least lower the confidence of how much you rely on these things? Faith is a powerful drug. I'll put it that way. Melody Joy, thank you for that super sticker, sweetheart. I always enjoy seeing you in the chat, and sometimes I see you in other people's chats. We have to support the community and go show everybody on YouTube we love them and that we appreciate them and bringing their own flavor. We all have our own flavor here. So thank you for that support. Iron Man is definitely better than the Bible. Well, what I liked about the first Iron Man was it's like Plato's cave. He's this arrogant son of a bitch who has it all figured out. He don't give me my alcohol, and he's just chilling, doing whatever he wants, flying on this jet. Next thing you know, these bombs are blasting, and then boom, terrorists end up jumping in, and the guy's like about to die with shrapnel near his heart, and he's in a cave, and he has to kind of realize his place and wake up inside of this cave, and he creates an apparatus that keeps it like a magnetic one in his chest, and he's escaping the cave as a hero. Right? It's like a hero archetype type story. So thanks so much, man. I appreciate you bringing that up. Look, we got some evil sinner who's joined us right now. What is up?
Hey, man. How's it going?
Are you that evil sinner I'm talking about?
Still, yeah. You still sinning? Uh-oh.
I've got some super chats I wanted to tackle as we go, if that's cool, Dr. Kill.
Yeah, go ahead, man. I just sending a text to my wife.
Okay. Thank you for being the hardest working man on YouTube. David Fayfield, thank you so much for the super chat, number one. And number two, I really appreciate you noticing and recognizing the hard work that I put in. Do I have the keys? I think I hit my alarm on my car. Do you hear that?
I definitely hear that.
That was me. Total accident. My neighbors are probably like, what the heck is going on? Thank you. Lots of hard work. And I don't know. I'm extreme in everything I do. So I put a lot of effort into this and I really enjoy this. That's why I also do it. They say if you do what you love, you haven't worked a day in your life. And so I'm not going to say that. Some days it's definitely tough, but thank you so much. Dave Horner said 700 Club and Joel Olstein. Thank you for that super chat. Yeah. Like, obviously, these would be the pop culture Christian people that, all sorts of TV watchers, people who sit on their couch watching TV, usually old school Christians. I call them old school for me because it was like the parents of my friends who would watch TV evangelist and whatnot. They have this is the most ridiculous level of content. Did you want to comment on that, Kip?
No, I was just gonna say that's my parents. 700 Club, and maybe not Joel Olstein so much, but yeah, here in Canada it's 100 Huntley Street. I know my mom has always been a huge fan of 100 Huntley Street. My in-laws, I'm not sure if they still do, but for a long time they were really big into Benny Hinn.
Oh gosh, I was too.
Yeah.
When I spoke in tongues back in the day and I believed in like the faith healing and stuff, and the music had you hypnotized when you'd listen in, and there'd be these little kids, and you might say some of them might be actors, but others aren't. They literally manipulate their audience to a point where there's real authentic people who are going up into this and they're standing on stage, and the sincerity that comes from their face of like what they're suffering from. And then here he is with this jacket slapping him in the face with the Holy Ghost, like Hamara Shibaba, like a Ryukin from Street Fighter. You know what I mean? And
yeah. Hey, have you seen this? It started last year, but I just finished watching season 2. There's this this show that Danny McBride made on HBO called The Righteous Gemstones.
I have not.
Okay, it's like a parody show about a massive multi-million-dollar family-based prosperity gospel outfit. It's not I don't think it's especially funny most of the time, but it's pretty. There's some elements in it that are pretty good. So.
Interesting. Well, let me put my AC on, and then I want to throw some ideas out there. What really started to get me doubting? Hold on one second.
Oh, look. Nazarite started doubting because of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
You might hear a little hum in the background, but I am in the garage, and I insulated this bad boy for a reason so I could try and keep heat or air in. But this is my office out here. It looks like I have some amazing office because I put, lights behind me and stuff, but I am literally in a garage. And most people don't even know that. Everything I do is out here. So real quick, I want to mention this, and we'll keep tackling super chats as we go. I see you, Indo. Thank you. But what really got me going, I think, was finding out how all of the church ignores, for the most part. Now, I'm within Orthodoxy. I want to paint a picture. I'm within the bubble of you're good. You believe the physical resurrection. Jesus is God in the flesh. I'm a Trinitarian, etc. And I started to realize that people are ignoring this Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21 context. And they're trying to apply it to the Jews today, or it's about the race of the Jews never ending. And this apocalypse, I call it, where not one stone will be left upon another. And here are the signs that will come. I started to get into that and realize, hold on, this already happened. or at least most of what is described there, is about 70 AD, the destruction of Jerusalem. And most of the church kind of ignores that, but there's plenty of people within Orthodoxy who recognize it. So I started there, and then I saw this movement called full preterism. I mentioned this before. I know that this is an odd, very unique, different position. I didn't even doubt then. I was still a Christian when I believed that the second coming of Jesus happened in the first century. I was still a Christian, but I was treated like I was Valentinius, okay? I was treated like I was working for Satan. Like, what do you mean? I argued with people like, this is what Jesus said, dude. Like, I'm not making this up. Read your Bible. And that became a big problem. So I got excommunicated because I was actually ridiculed and rebuked by 5 elders at the Presbyterian Church.
Wow. Were you like legit excommunicated?
Oh, I was. A legal document was mailed to my house.
No, do you still have it? I hope you still have it.
I'm sure my wife has it because she got one a year before me. They excommunicated her way before they excommunicated me.
Wow. Why did they excommunicate her?
Members, huh?
Why did they excommunicate her?
Man, I don't think they actually ever thought she was truly a Christian. It was because of me. I was so into it trying to get her in, and she's like, honey, I'm not comfortable. Now I was, radical, and I'm a caged Calvinist at the time, trying to like convince, her to be more serious about the word of God and stuff. She's like, I'm just not into this. They're reading everything we sing from is from the 1700s. Some of the words I can't even pronounce. Like, they don't sing any modern. It's not even normal. Like, thou hithereth thus, like, what the heck are you doing? And we only could use one instrument. They wouldn't use any other instruments. So super old school. We're like from the family of the Puritans is the form of PCA Presbyterian type church we were. We read a lot of the Puritans. Westminster Confession of Faith, the whole nine. So I get excommunicated. I'm just skipping ahead. But I'm still a believer. But I think 99% of the church is wrong. And when you're already in a predicament where you think 99% of the church does not even read their Bible and doesn't even recognize that it was supposed to happen then. So as a believer, you don't say it's supposed to. You say if Jesus said it was going to happen, then it did. That's why I was shocked when I interviewed Ian Mills and he said, Jesus was wrong. Or I hear C.S. Lewis say, well, Jesus got that one wrong. God in the flesh got this wrong. I couldn't accept that. So I became a fundamentalist full preterist, and I was still a believer. The only chink in my armor of faith was, why did I get this right and everyone else get it wrong? So I thought, well, my Calvinism fits into this. Maybe I'm elect. Like, maybe I'm chosen for this knowledge of understanding, and they just don't get it. So there's a superiority complex that comes with that. You think you're smarter and better or chosen by God to know this, and they just are dumb or blind or whatever, and they just don't get it. What really got me to doubt, though, was seeing other examples around the time of and in the ancient world where dying and rising, ascending people, historical people, some fictional, some historical. When I started recognizing that this whole motif of life, death, rebirth, whatever, ascension, deity, deifying, etc., when I saw these things were things that happened in other cultures, and then I saw early church fathers talk about them like, just as you believed in Apollo, and just like you accept these gods, Jesus is like that to us. And I started to realize, whoa. Why is this one special? Enough rambling, man. I had to just spill it out there because that was the whole title of the video. That's what really got me started.
It's all good.
What about you?
I think for me it certainly started in university. Like when I started university, I spent a year in Bible college after high school. Well, first I went to like a discipleship school in New Zealand for 6 months, which was great. No, it was a year. Yeah, I was there for a year. And then I got married and then I went to Bible college. And the Bible college I was attending, because I got caught up with a bunch of uh, um, super Reformed Calvinists at my very non-Calvinist Bible college. So after a year, I decided that the place was just way too warm and fuzzy for me. So I transferred to another Bible college out on the coast, which was attached to Trinity Western University, and spent a year there, and decided I just wanted to transfer into the university directly, and get a proper education. So, and it was really at that point that, you're confronted by historical critical scholarship and rhetorical methods for reading scriptures and textual criticism
You
and
literally were
the
jumping
variety
in
of
the deep end.
sources. Oh yeah. So, and that all had me going, well, and it was pretty quick, I think. Like it was literally just weeks or months of this that had me going, there's a better way to do this. But this is the thing, and I get kind of irritated. I've seen I don't know if there's others who've done it. This is the one that I've seen most frequently is David Falk has oftentimes said that academics who deconvert and take a very I guess an adversarial counter apologetic approach to Christianity are ones who were like full blown fundamentalists, and it just blew out their little fundamentalist minds. That's not what happened to me at all. I was a Christian for decades after, you know, I started to see that the texts were loaded with myth, and
Hmm.
that there was very much a strong spiritual theological component to it. So yeah, it was decades of that. But I think what really did it was, I don't know, I got disillusioned with how people do church. Um, yeah, that and just gaining a stronger understanding of how similar, I suppose, we all are as people, regardless
Yeah.
of faith or creed, or when secularism stopped being the enemy, and I started seeing that people without faith are no different at all than people with faith. I'm like, well, you know, what's the point really? So,
And then, of
yeah.
course, with your biblical knowledge, that obviously coupled you with dismantling what we were always taught, which is a problem. Like, hold on,
But
so you were cutting through the
like the
2,000, 3,000 years of baggage, and you were like, I'm seeing what the earliest ideas really were from the author's intent. And when you're seeing
oh
like
yeah.
author's intent, you're blown away to go, that's never how I've been told this is meant to be understood. That can really, I
But
feel like,
that never did it for me though, right?
wow.
Like that certainly caused me to shift. Like I
Mhm.
had to make it caused a dramatic change in my own theology. Um and really for the longest time, are you still there, Derek? Hello?
Hey, sorry, I put you up on the full screen.
Oh. Oh,
I did that on
okay. I
purpose.
was
I
like,
was actually turning the
where
air.
did he
I
go?
put the air way too cold. See. Yeah. Anyway,
Oh. Wow. So, but no, I for the I think the longest period of time and closer to the end, I was like, my academics are over here, and I put my biblical scholar hat on, and I do all this, but nary shall it ever intersect with my faith and what I believe and what's happening at church. So, and I managed that way for a long time, and I think because I recognized um, pretty early on that it's not about it has nothing at all to do with, the historical evidence.
Hmm.
It has everything to do with the
Internal.
feels, right?
Yeah.
It's all
Oh,
internal. So,
man.
and I'm like, I can live with that. I can have a personal relationship with Jesus, and both he and I can roll our eyes at the nonsense. So, but that, after a while, I think, like I said, it was just coming to the recognition that, religion, I think, generally, doesn't separate anybody from anybody else. We're all just exactly the same. So,
Thank you so much, man. Let me get these super chats here. Indo, thank you
yeah,
for that
sure.
super chat. Habermas recently added witnesses willing to die for belief in his minimal facts. What do you think about this? Is it fact? Is it good evidence? I've been saying this for a while. I said this to Doug on his own channel one of those lives ago. I said, Doug, it's like, even if he didn't put this as a minimal fact argument, it always becomes the go-to, because their whole goal is to get you to say they were sincere. They really believed it. So, like, when you hear arguments like the disciples stole the bodies, why would they steal the body being absolutely dishonest and sincerely willing to die for the lie? These are the kind of arguments you hear. So I think it's silly. I don't think it should be part of minimal facts. At the very least, let's just put it this way. Reading Paul's letters, he is clearly, seemingly to me, a fanatic. This guy is drinking the Kool-Aid and is like a charismatic figure, in my opinion. He is not what we think of when we think of rabbis, right? Like just a typical regular rabbi today that you talk to. This guy is like, he's like the Benny Hinn of his first century, in my opinion. He's like one of these type of guys. The way he's reinterpreting text, God doesn't care about oxen. This passage is speaking about me. Okay, whoa. Like, I would have understood it if you made it an analogy, Paul, but you made this text actually talk about you in the Hebrew Bible. It's not, he's got a radical, wild, Kool-Aid drinking kind of agenda, it seems like. But so did Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus did too. So if people are willing to die for something that they're completely delusional in believing, like I was, it doesn't show the validity of truth at all to me, but it's an apologetic argument they love to keep bringing up. So they might as well add it to their minimal facts argument because, well, they're not lying. They're willing to die for it.
I think it's begging the question. Like, it's just for most Christians, it is just accepted at the outset that there were, that there was this massive martyrdom from the very beginning. And I think that gets undercut quite a bit when you come to recognize that that martyrdom very early becomes a part of the theology. Like this becomes a very strong component of the religion, is suffering and ultimately dying for what you believe. I think that's right there in the first century. So it becomes very difficult, like from an historical perspective, it becomes very difficult to separate, well, how much of this actually reflects the real world out there versus how much of this is kind of like the modern day exaggerations of persecution of the church, and like ridiculously so here in the free West in the United States and in Canada and Europe, right? So, I think it's nonsense.
I think that another thing you said, just to highlight, is we take it away from martyrdom and willing to die. Some of the people reflected in the text of the New Testament, it almost seems like their mission was to communicate with the people who are on the brink of death half the time. Oh, you got an illness. Oh, you're sick.
Yeah.
Oh, you're poor. You're probably going to die soon anyways, kind of people. well, don't worry, we have something good for the people who are suffering. And so this message works really good for that whole suffering idea. And the poor, the outcast, the lowly, the slaves would have been all over this. It fit perfectly in their actual situations in life, it seems. And they're probably rich, just like today, who empathize with the poor. And then you have rich who don't give a crap. So there are probably some people who were in powerful places, or at least in a higher status, if we were going to use kind of a caste system, because this is how the ancient world oftentimes worked. You know, they would find maybe some value in this type of philosophy because they found some philosophy in there that reflect some Platonic, Neoplatonic idea, or maybe even Stoicism or something that they're interested in. But there's a lot here to look into. I just think I'm kind of tired of that same old systematic approach, because it can be easily knocked down with, why did the 9/11? Did they really believe that they were going to get, 72 virgins? Were they lying? No, they're sincerely willing to die for what they believe in. I mean, it's kind of a silly, but then you got to couple it and add 10 or 12 or 14 other caveats to make your argument. It's one of those things. Chris, thank you for that super chat.
But they didn't actually see it happen, Derek. That makes all the difference.
Well, Paul didn't see it happen either. The best you have is James, but even his death is disputed on why he was actually killed. So there's a lot of, reasons we should doubt. One of the texts that talks about James has a different conclusion for the reason he's killed. And Josephus has his own reasons, if you take that to be James, the same guy. And there's a lot of reasons to be like, hold on, what are we looking at? Chris, thank you for that super chat, my friend. I never was a believer, but after 15 years of church, family, worship, band, I was open to the idea of God. So I studied the Bible, but only got apologetic answers to my questions. I'm an atheist now. Thank you for that insight into your life, Chris. And, I grew up in that Jesus Bible Belt mentality. And all I always heard were the apologetic answers. That's why what I'm hearing now and what I'm showing you now is the most fun. I get such a pleasure out of having someone's light bulb in their brain going off, going, what? I never even, I didn't even think that was something I'd ever find out. You didn't know there was so much more fun to the Bible without that religious motivation to try and get you convinced to believe and you need to become part of this faith, whatever. No. We're secular scholars and studying this Bible that's ancient information. I always have a blast. Did you want to comment on that before we move on?
No, I'm good. I was distracted by something else for a minute.
Okay. Henry M. said, brother, thanks for your work as always. Thank you for the support, and the compliment keeps me going. It motivates me. It really does. I really appreciate it. I also, for those who are in the chat, just want to make a point. This is Kip's YouTube channel. Go subscribe. He is at 5,220 something, it looks like, subscribers. We want to get him to 6,666 if we can. So his name, Dr. Kill, matches his subscriber count. So please go subscribe.
That's right.
Donnie Springer said, Derek, is it mainly just a fear of going to hell that trip people up? That's a good question. Is it a fear of hell that trips people? I think that plays a role.
I think that's big for a lot of people. And I don't know about you, but when I finally, I guess deconverted, the fear of hell still lingered for a very long time. I mean, it probably took a couple years for me to get over that.
Yeah, it is a spooky thing. Doug, were you afraid of the big bad boogeyman?
No, not really. I think that's
not Doug. No.
I worked for the guy, so he's nice. He's not bad. You're talking about Satan, right?
It's hard to know anymore if it's Yahweh or Satan. I'm trying to figure that out still, but
no. It's clear in the Bible. Yahweh's the top dude, and then Satan is his right-hand man.
Okay, I was thinking of
I actually
like
think
the
Satan
Gnostics.
seems like a pretty good guy or gal to work for. I mean, he's very organized. I think
Never
he
lies.
strikes me as fairly meticulous. He doesn't lie.
Never lies.
Yeah, he seems to be a planner too. Do I have that right? Like Yahweh's more
like
of a,
the other day I
you know,
wanted to go to Disneyland with him, and he says, "No, this is too spontaneous." He likes to plan out his day, his weeks. Yeah. He's
That
very
makes
meticulous.
sense.
it's scheduled for like many months from now.
Yeah. You know what
He's
Satan's
gotta do
favorite ride is?
A
at
budget
Disney-
analysis first.
Satan's favorite ride at Disneyland. You know
Huh.
what it is? Rise of the Resistance.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that
ride.
is. What is
You know what that is? It's a
No.
Star Wars themed ride that you go in and they kind of, you're all prisoners, and you got like a whole bunch of stormtroopers around you, and then they lead you into this like hallway, and they're gonna like scare you, that they're gonna torture you, and then you get saved by the rebels. But when we walked into the torture chamber, I raised my hand. I said, "Excuse me," and it wasn't a stormtrooper, but someone else came up to me. Yes. I said, "Will there be snacks during this interrogation?"
Oh my gosh. I could see you really doing that, by the way.
I love trying to throw those people off script, just like precepts.
You got to do it. You do get under their skin. I'm fairly confident. Stop Scamming Man. Thank you for that super chat, my friend. There was a time where I thought Derek might be Robert Price's son. I can't blame him.
I don't see any resemblance there.
No, not the resemblance. I think it's kind of just the joke of like, I always have Dr. Price on. But you got to admit, the guy has just so much insight into so many areas. I always enjoy learning from Bob, and I don't draw all the conclusions he does. But
that's why he has such a thick, full beard. Is because he has so much knowledge in his brain, it just pushes it out. Was it Chiwi pets? What would they call Chi? There was like
Chia
these
pets.
Chia pets. Yeah.
Chia,
the pottery that grows.
Oh, thanks so much, Stop Scamming Man. Jason Anderson for the Spicy McChicken Fonda off to History Valley. Yeah, that was a great interview the other night. I really, really appreciate that. Just hitting these super chats real quick, Doug. Then we're gonna go wherever we want to go because we'll let the Holy Spirit guide us. Or
follow the money.
Yeah, Daniel, thank you for the super chat. In evangelicalism, much is made of the idea of absolute certainty. When I learned a bit of philosophy and realized that absolute certainty is essentially an illusion, that was a huge blow to my faith. Wow.
He sounds like maybe he came from a precept background if it blew his faith that quickly.
I mean,
because with precept, certainty is huge.
Yeah. It definitely is. And maybe I think that I spend a lot of time exploring that as well. And I think Doug's right that probably was a result of the time I spent with the super reformed Calvinists in my Bible college. But I remember reading a book by what's his name? He's John MacArthur's right hand guy.
John MacArthur.
Neither of you. You know who that is, don't you?
Is that the guy who's in charge of the Gospel Coalition? No,
he's Grace to You.
That is John.
He's on
MacArthur.
Larry King all the time. Oh, is he in charge of the Gospel Coalition? See, I don't even know.
No.
What that is.
Grace to You is John MacArthur, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's really old now.
Well, thank you for that insight, Daniel.
John Frame. That's it. John Frame.
John Frame.
And the title of the book was Certainty. And it was all just a Cornelius Van Til an exercise in Cornelius Van Til fellation.
This guy?
It was something else. Yeah, I guess so. I don't know what he looks like, but
he's one sandwich away from being obese. Sorry, that was rude.
That was
Yes.
rude. I want everybody go
Floyd
subscribe.
FP is confirming here that Frame was one of Van Til's students. Yeah. So
Check out Doug's
but I
channel.
think after. Sorry.
Just a sweet plug in real quick. I just posted it so everybody knows. Go subscribe to Doug's channel. He is absolutely fun to watch and listen to, and he's paying me to say that. So
Big
I just
bucks.
want you to know, big bucks. So thank you so much for that, Doug, for that money, for plugging your YouTube channel.
No problem. I learned it from what's his name, Cameron Bertuzzi, at Capturing Christianity. Yeah,
Of course you did.
he teaches me all my marketing tricks.
Now, if you die, I'm not sure how I'm going to keep going though. So this is going to be a problem, you know.
I'm not going to die today, at least.
Okay.
That's a certainty.
Make it sure.
Should you maybe switch tactics though, Doug? Because I think I mean I've heard you talk about how you think maybe Cameron's appeal and his audience might be waning.
Oh yeah, good point. Why would I emulate someone who's dying?
Yeah.
That's
Gotta
cool.
think about on that.
But getting back to the earlier topic, I don't know if I was weird, but once I realized that the Gospels and the New Testament was basically mostly a story, the fear of hell just poofed away.
I have to agree with you. I did not believe, of course, it was just a story. But once you realize that, I think it was coupled with listening to a lot of these people talk about, well, you deal with science. And you start realizing, well, did you know that fire comes out of the ground in a volcano? And did you know that there are like gas pockets of fire that come out of the ground? So they're observing natural phenomena, assuming this is something that you'll go when you go into the underworld. It's 1 + 1 = 2. It's a silly, just a leap. It's a leap of logic in their head in the ancient world. That's what made me start to realize, like, hold on. I read that book, A Divine Revelation of Hell, and I had nightmares. I'm not making this up. Mary Kay Baxter was her name. She had this vision. Jesus came to her in her dream. She claims this is all true. Took her soul to hell for 7 days or something. And finally, so hell is a human body. It's in the shape of a human body. There's a head, and you enter through the jaw of hell. So you go through the mouth to enter in. And she's describing these like horrific scenes with pitchforks, demons stabbing people and people's flesh melting off and then it growing back on and then melting off, like unbelievable descriptions. Finally, they get into the worst part of hell, which is the heart. And Jesus left her to let her be tortured for I don't know how long, and then came and rescued her and said, I just wanted you to know. Like, I'm not kidding. This is the stuff she said in her book.
What would Robert Price say to the question about hell? Like, would he say, if he had to defend a certain view of hell biblically, what would he say is the most biblical defense of hell? Is it annihilationism? Is it universalism? Is it eternal conscious torment? Is it other? Are you going to text him right now?
I'm calling him.
Yeah,
this is the Robert Price hotline.
Let's call him Dr. Price and get. So we got to help the Christians and the Muslims.
Phone a friend. It's got to be a form of annihilation.
Dr. Bob, you are live on MythVision podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
Okay, except I'm also just about ready to get on to History Valley.
Oh, snap. So one question. Is the Bible teaching annihilationism, eternal conscious torment, or is it a mixture of all different things?
There's several different options. It can't easily be harmonized.
So there's no right answer.
There's no right answer.
You know, 1 Corinthians 15 does seem to be annihilationist. No resurrection. Salvation is resurrection, and those who are wicked or unbelievers are just out of luck. They're dead, and they're going to stay that way. Matthew 25 apparently speaks of eternal suffering, and as does Revelation. Somewhere 17, I think. The smoke of their torment goes up day and night forever and ever. That is predicated of those who have taken the mark of the beast, though it doesn't say whether everybody's going to get that treatment or not. And Luke's story of the rich man and Lazarus seems to imply a hell of conscious torment, but there are different. According to Revelation and Acts, there's a resurrection of the wicked as well as the righteous, but you don't hear that elsewhere. So there's no one view, and there's just no justification for harmonizing them together as if it's one complicated thing. If it is, we don't know that. It might just be a product of our own ingenuity, not that of the ancients. It doesn't spell out any such thing.
Well, for that answer, you will not be going to hell, sir. Thank you.
Oh, good thing.
Hallelujah. Hamarashi Baba. Love you, Dr. Bob.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Awesome. Very
also-
thorough.
So, that was so quick. When a Christian hears that, and I think they can see it for themselves, that why be scared of something that's just a mashup, mix up, not straight, like. And I have a running thing, like I'm going to give $10,000 of my own money to if hell is real, I will pay them that. So we'll have Yahweh put the money.
Who
in
are you
escrow.
paying?
Anybody, I'll bet anyone that hell's not real. And if anyone wants to take that bet, and if I turn out to be wrong, I will pay them $10,000.
Right.
Yahweh will hold it in escrow and pay them in heaven. They'll say, by the way, this
Oh,
is from
I
Doug.
see.
He lost the bet. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Wow.
And my money is good in heaven. Like they say, oh, we don't need money in heaven. But no, you got to
What do
buy
you
things
think-
for the mansions and stuff.
your pine points are.
What do you think the
are
price
worth-
of gold is in heaven? Like it's got to be different than
Yeah,
here.
it's really low.
no?
It's really low. Yeah,
I would
because
think
the streets
so.
are
I
paved
think
with
it's
it.
I mean, you
like-
can walk
it's
to the
paved in it.
ocean and pick up the diamond sea sand,
Well,
and you get
yeah.
more money. Yeah. So anyway, I do want to ask a
But there's
question.
no
but let me
oil in heaven.
I want to ask both of you a question to get your angle on this, but let me hit these super chats real quick here. Forden Gamzee, the Gordon Ramsay in disguise. I grew up Mormon. I started doubting when I compared an Egyptian lion couch scene to facsimile one from
Facsimile
Joseph
one.
Smith's Book of Abraham. It demonstrated that Joseph Smith Jr. would tamper with real history.
Cool.
Grew up Mormon. Wow. Thank you for that testimony and the support. I always appreciate that. Every super chat does equate to myth money. It's kind of a spinoff. We come from different regions. Pine points, you can cash in your pine points if you're going into the myth money area.
Money? That
Myth
sounds
money.
fake to me.
I don't know. It's only real to go to the pearly gates, though. So, this is what I've been telling people. You may not have it here now, but it will show up when you're there with St. Peter. So just remember that. Tithe to the truth. Hallelujah. Cowboy 1000. Thank you for the super chat. Anti-Semitism in the history of Christianity was also huge for me. Example, Martin Luther. Wow. That's actually an interesting point. Like, why is it that the Messiah, who's a Jew, right? And the church is anti-Jewish. Blows me away. But
the Jews killed Jesus. That's why.
I know. That's
just science.
Your Lord is Jewish, though. Like, it's kind of like, it's ridiculous how that could have developed to become like that. But yeah. And a couple more, and then I got that question for you. My buddy Caleb Jackson. Hi, Derek. Is there a link to join the stream? Yes, I'll send you the link here in a moment. I want to have Doug interrogate you, Caleb.
I already did. Yeah, he's an atheist now.
Dude, he's actually pretty laid back, man.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for that support. And yes, I will get on Facebook. I just didn't want it notifying me and making all these noises the whole time. Topic discuss. I'm a Mormon too. And question for Pine Creek. When is poker today?
Poker today is in 4 hours, 45 minutes.
I got to admit, you stopped inviting me. Is it because you're afraid I'm going to relapse?
What? You're not on the list? Reed's in charge of that, but maybe he handed it off to Myron and he always makes mistakes. But you want to come? We do tournaments now.
What?
So there's a little more luck involved, so you might have a chance.
I would like to periodically join you. I'm not going to lie. I would love to periodically join you. I would want to do it every time because then I might.
Okay, we'll put you on the list. And anybody who, we do extensive research on anybody who wants to join and make sure we need your mother's maiden name and your last 4 of your social security, and then we'll and your first pet's name. and then we check you out. And then if you pass all our checks, you can come play poker with us.
Yeah.
No Canadians in there,
You
right?
need the routing.
No,
and
there's
the-
lots of Canadians.
you
Yeah,
need
none
the
of them have
routing
social
and the
security numbers, though.
Oh yeah, social security numbers or social insurance numbers. What is that? What they?
My social
It's been
insurance
so
number.
long.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you need
Yeah.
fingerprints? Like, do I need to send you a fingerprint?
No fingerprints. We just need a retina scan.
Okay. I was thinking of a DNA swab. We could send you that as
But
well.
it's great. It's great fun. The
A
most you can
COVID
lose-
test? Do you need
No
to take
COVID.
a
No,
COVID
no.
test?
We're what's COVID?
Oh my gosh. You're a trip.
It's
Okay.
over.
I got to ask you this question before we end up bringing Caleb on, and this is it. Doug, you've been doing this for a while. I've been doing this for a while. Kip's been here. He's been doing the scholarly stuff for a while, and he's just over the past, would you say, year and a half now? You've been involved online now.
Yeah, about a year and a quarter.
If I were, everybody's different, but if we took a collective data to try and factor in, here are the statistics. What has been the best approach that you've taken to help people start realizing or waking up? Because as Kip said earlier, it wasn't necessarily the historical data, as you've told me before too. You can get into this and prove this about the Bible all day long, Derek. They're just going to one step aside or reinterpret or redefine or whatever. But what has been the best tool that you've used to help chip away that faith barrier that blocks us from seeing the light?
I know my answer. You want to go first, Kip?
Well, mine's probably not. My advice should not be followed because I haven't managed to, convince anyone, as far as I know, of the folly of Christianity or religion. But I think I would say, while I don't believe that the historical arguments or the historical, the textual arguments, the kind of stuff that I do, I don't think that's especially convincing to people who are like entrenched within it, because it's all about me and Jesus. But I definitely think that's a place to start. Ultimately, you have to get people to realize that there's nothing special about this one-on-one, this relationship you have with the resurrected Messiah.
I think the reason why all three of us are effective is because we're essentially nice guys. And what you see is what you get. Why are you laughing, Kip?
No, I'm
You're
sorry.
on parole?
Kip's not so nice, everybody. Kip's not so nice. But
No. See, I think
Like,
I laugh
Derek's the
because I
nicest
don't get called a nice guy very often.
no, you really are. I'm teasing. You're laughing because that's not what you get called by people online, because they have differing views and you're critical. But when I talk to you, I've never had a problem. Like, there's never been a personality issue between either one of you guys.
Yeah.
Myron has been a different story. I think this is why I'm not on the poker list. But
Yeah, he's a douche. But I think having someone who believes things differently than you do, like you, is the first step. Because if they don't like you, if they hate you, if they have zero appreciation or respect for anything you say, then they're not going to watch. They're not going to listen. Even when you talk, your mouth is moving. They're not going to hear what you're saying. They're just thinking about all the ways that you're wrong. And so I think humor has been a big one. I think, even though I get a lot of emails saying I'm soft-spoken, and that attracted the Christian to me, that, I'm not like an angry atheist, but, I use sarcasm like crazy with no apology. But I seem to get away with it more so than the average person. I don't know why. But but yeah, I think...
See, that's probably also my failing because I'm not funny. But yeah.
Well, you are wearing that toque.
You think it's a funny?
I think
This is my Norwegian toque.
Okay.
if I were to chip away at this,
Season's almost over, by the way. Anyways,
before I bring my good friend Caleb on, I wanted to chip away. I think what it is realizing that sometimes I even become a better person when I left the faith. Like it allowed me my philosophy is I don't know often, which gives me more open-mindedness and more empathy. I did have certain views about people who lived certain orientations in life because of the way I viewed the Bible and the whole thing. But I think when they realize, like, there are people like him who left and they're actually happy. They actually love life. They love living in this world, and they're happy. They're enjoying this stuff, and they're still able to read their Bible, right? Like, most people get bitter, or a lot of them that I talk to are like, they hate the Bible, or they are just anti this and anti that. And it's like, no, this has actually become fun because it's just another piece of literature, as if we're reading the Homeric epics or something else. Of course, it's fun to me because it's like, there's certain people who look at this like I used to look at this, and I know exactly how they're looking at this text, but I'm playing with it like it's just literature, knowing that this is taboo for them to even view their own literature this way. That's,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think it's hard for people to see that from inside, right? But when you step outside, you come to you come to realize, like anything, it's hard to love, like to truly love something that you are obligated to agree with or to obey, right? If you have an authoritarian parent to whom you must always obey and always concede is right, and I mean, that's the definition of an abusive relationship, right? And from the outside we can all see that. From the inside it's harder, and I think the relationship with Scripture is the same. And this is why I always got I still continue to get so frustrated and irritated with this idea of a so-called high view of Scripture. Is supposedly a view of Scripture whereby we just agree with whatever Scripture says at the outset. No, I mean, if anything, my response to that has always been a high view of Scripture is one that takes it seriously, and one that's prepared to challenge it because you really do care. You care enough about the text to treat it properly, and to recognize that if it's all it's cracked up to be, this is not going to be any problem for it.
Welcome, Caleb. How are you, my brother?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Thanks for joining in on the Lord's Day.
Right.
Here with a bunch of people who are just heretics.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of heretics.
Did you get my gift card?
Did I get your gift card?
Yeah, I sent you an atheist gift card, $20 to Applebee's.
Oh, really? Yeah. Impressive that you don't have my ad. Impressive you can do that without my address. You must have on.
Hey, I work for Satan. I know where you live.
Works for Satan.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. Applebee's. Oh, hey, that's good. I just had Chili's today, so it's analogous.
Oh, yeah.
I think Chili's is a little bit better than Applebee's, but
I've never been to Applebee's.
Really?
Well,
yeah, you're Canadian.
We don't have any.
You don't have any?
I mean, I guess they're no. I've seen them sometimes when I've crossed the border into Washington State, but you can't do that anymore.
Kip goes to the restaurants where they have the carcass of a moose hanging outside.
That's funny.
You better believe it.
Chili's chips and salsa is where it's at, though. I'm not.
It is.
Oh man,
We have Chili's.
Oh, you do have Chili's. Okay.
Yeah, but I think I've only been to Chili's once.
Oh, I've never been to Tim Hortons, if that makes you feel any better. But
I hate Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons is awful. Everybody should
Oh.
stop going to Tim Hortons. Just
That's funny.
let it die, please.
I was reading that I think a place in Quebec now changed the name of poutine because of Putin, and they didn't want to support him, so they changed it to like gravy fries or something, which I thought was kind of funny. So good for Canada for sticking it to Putin.
Way to
Wow.
go, Quebec. That's there's a reason why Quebec is the redheaded stepchild of Canada.
The French redheaded stepchild.
Kip, why do you not like Tim Hortons?
Oh, because it's gross. The coffee is gross. The donuts are okay.
The sandwiches are great, aren't they?
I don't eat sandwiches.
Okay. Well, they don't have moose sandwiches there for
Well, or beaver.
Isn't beaver tail a thing over there, like chocolate covered beaver tail?
What?
I don't know. I had someone from Canada say that was a thing.
You've been watching too much of Letterkenny.
It's not an actual beaver. It's not an actual beaver tail.
Oh, okay. It's just called that.
It's a pastry.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense
and
because
they're
actual
delicious.
beaver tail would sound kind of gross.
I think that would be gross if it was covered in chocolate. But I mean that sounds much more like something that would happen in Norway or Iceland.
Yeah. Don't they eat raw shark in Iceland? I think it's like cubed raw shark. Ugh. Fermented
terrible.
shark.
Now listen,
Terrible
we know why you're here, Caleb. We know why, bro.
You're hurting inside.
It's okay. I've already given up trying to convert Doug, so
We know that you want to join, but you're scared. No, I'm just kidding.
No. I think Doug said I'd be an atheist in the next 5 years or so.
No, deist.
Oh, deist. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
But I am.
I don't know because
I say that to everyone.
he believes there's active miracles happening today, and
That's
so
true.
Who does?
yeah, Caleb. I think he takes a different approach, and I think that factoring, and this is my guess, Caleb. Can I guess? You can't crucify me for this because I am 33 years of age, and that could happen to me.
It could. You could be resurrected though afterwards.
I could, and maybe with your powers, especially if the miracles happen today. So, two things I think make you hang on to this, and I think it's personal experience, and I think it's this miracle, modern day miracle belief. I think those are the two major things. I'm not going to say there isn't other less categories that might factor into this, but I think it's personal experience, and I think it's you believing in modern day miracles.
With Christianity or with God in general?
This is the tough part because when you say, God, I think that what Christians mean is this Trinity or this assumption that this is the God that's doing these things. I don't see how we'd separate that unless you're just a philosopher who isn't accounting and saying, "Oh, I'm a Christian." There are people who don't believe in Christianity who have a monotheistic view of God and they just believe that there's a supreme power or whatever, and they aren't Christians, and they're willing to go, well, so what if Hindus also do miracles or any other religious claims also have these things? It's not this God, it's just God, which is not Christianity. It is not Hinduism. It is not this. It is not that. Whatever it might be. I'm just making a point.
Yeah. Or he could be a deist and just say he doesn't care about humans at all, and a religion is invented, but there's still some higher being out there, a creator God, like the Jefferson version of God, or how most of the founding fathers thought of him. So maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Am I close to the answer there, or do you think I'm touching the root of it?
I think that you're close. I don't think that's all. That maybe one of the roots of it. I mean, there might be other things. I think like the moral argument as well would apply to that to a certain degree. But yeah, I don't think that you're wrong. I mean, certainly those are important things as well. But yeah, I think it's a cumulative kind of thing, and that it matters. But I don't know. I think even if deism were true, I don't know what pragmatic value that would have. It'd be like, oh yeah, that's cool. Maybe there's a God, but who would really care? It wouldn't affect your day-to-day life anyway.
It'd give you some explanation though.
It would, but if I'm going to die anyway and forget all explanations, so who would ultimately care? I mean, it'd be nice to pat yourself on the back, but
there's the answer, Derek. You
ultimately care.
Yeah.
Well, it was the phrase if I'm just going to die anyway, and that's it. I think eternal life is huge for you, right?
Yeah, of course it would.
I think it's a transcendental thing. I really do. I talked to a buddy of mine about morality, and he literally said to me, there is no morality if there isn't something transcendental about it. If it's only morality because in this particular case, and there's not something beyond that, you don't have morality. It has to go outside for him to accept that there's real morality. And like, I was trying to explain this to him, and I'm like, I get it. Like, there's no purpose unless there's a grand purpose in their minds. Like, it's this idea that I used to hold to, and I'm trying to explain how I think we're looking at it wrong. Of course, I think that we're assuming something. We want there to be there. So anyway, I always tend to get a point across and then bring up 10 other points, and you forget the earlier points. So Doug, press on that button a little. I'd like to hear more about that.
Well, I'm curious, Caleb, what do you think is the real reason Kip is not a Christian?
Going off of what little I know of him, I would presume it's because of his scholarship and that he doesn't believe that many things within the Bible are historically true and that it's a man-made religion. That would be part of my guess, but I don't know. As far as philosophical reasons, I don't know. I haven't asked him. Is that partially correct?
Well, that's tough because as I was explaining to Derek, I actually, like for 20 years, I was a pretty liberal, progressive Christian that held to a strong view of like the mythical origins of the text and the theological components of the stories in the New Testament. So, I mean, it's definitely a starting point, but that's not really what did it for me. Actually, something that I didn't tell you, Derek, which was really important in my deconversion, was the fact that, like, I've got 3 kids. All 3 of my kids are adopted, and they were adopted when they were a little older, so they all have attachment issues, which comes with its own special challenges. And I'll tell you, within like a couple years of raising kids with attachment issues, that was huge for us, for both my wife and I, in terms of raising questions just about God, who this God is, and what the hell he's doing.
Doug, what are the real reasons for you? Not the fake ones that you always say. I'm just kidding.
Well, if he works for Satan, he's going to lose his job if he converted, right? So why would he?
Well, no, I mean, Satan doesn't lie. He pointed that out. Satan, he's never.
You just do that lied. On the side, though, don't you, Doug?
Yeah, that's a side business. Like,
it's a side gig.
Yeah, Satan doesn't pay that well. But Caleb, what do you think is the real reason why I'm not a Christian? Oh, you're muted.
Is that better?
Yep.
Because you don't think that the evidence is good enough, and you would like to see something with your own eyes instead of having to believe other people and what you would consider to be hearsay evidence. It's not very good, among other reasons.
Yep, that's right.
I figured I could represent that pretty well. You know, it's funny because I was watching part of your stream yesterday. I think it was yesterday, and I was texting Eric Manning, who's testified, because I think you responded to one of his videos.
Oh,
like,
good.
Doug is, yeah. It's like, oh yeah, Doug is responding to one of you. He's like, oh yeah, I'm sure he is, and stuff like that. So yeah, I think he thought it was entertaining and stuff. So I summarized from the parts that I had saw of your comments on it. But
he didn't watch.
I think he said that he doesn't like watching you anymore. I usually have to tell him what you said.
Oh my goodness!
I think he said he doesn't bother.
Who doesn't?
Testify.
The guy called Testify.
Yeah, Daniel. Not Daniel. Derek. He was the one who was with Jonathan Pierce, you and I, on the December on the New Year's Eve stream.
Got it. Yeah.
Why do you think he's fairly decent sized YouTube channel of like Christian apologetics stuff?
Why do you think he doesn't like watching me? I mean, can't watch me.
I don't know. You'd have to ask him. I don't want to put words in his mouth. You know, we don't want to mess up the oral tradition here and put words in his mouth that wasn't said.
Oh,
we all know how that works.
By the time it gets to him,
it would. Yeah, might get interrupted there. Hi, Neil. How you doing?
What's going on, guys?
Is that a bison on your hat?
Yes,
he's from Buffalo, isn't he?
Yep.
I get it because Buffalo. Yeah.
Hey, New York, how you doing? You know what I mean?
Get it.
What do you think, Caleb? Psychoanalyze me, man. Why am I not a believer anymore?
Oh, I don't like psychoanalysis. That's Doug's.
I know. I'm just being silly. You know, like why do you think there's some underlying reason that is really the reason why I'm not a believer in your guess, or do you think it's legit investigating this stuff and finding out more and more? Like, holy smokes, everything we thought we knew about this is really not what we've been told. You see what I'm saying? Like, am I being honest is the question I'm asking you when I'm doing what I'm doing.
I have no idea if you're being honest. I don't want to make that judgment call. From what I can tell, you seem like an honest person, and so I have no reason to think that you're not being honest. You know, so if I was a Calvinist, I'd be like, yes, you're just suppressing the truth and righteousness of God because you're a sinner and depraved and you don't want to be with God. But no, I think it's mostly because of the scholarship that you've done and that you're in your opinion with the scholars that you've spoken to. You don't think that you think the New Testament in Christianity is a largely man-made religion that has Christian origins. And I would also be willing to bet that part of it is also because of suffering and evil in the world, and the seeming idea that God doesn't seem to intervene with certain deaths when it seems like he should. So those would be my two guesses. As far as the main stuff.
You know, Caleb, you do a good job still manning. I got to give it to you. I'd even go a step further and say it wasn't just that Christianity was man-made. I would say that the origins of Yahweh and this Canaanite
Judaism.
Religion, I don't see a way of divorcing unless you're a Marcionite. I just don't see that divorce taking place in the New Testament. So I find that much of what is going on, I mean, it could be possible. If we're taking that approach, then yeah.
Are you familiar with Greg Boyd's work on that by chance? I don't know if you know who that is.
I know who that is, but I have not looked into his work.
He wrote I think he has a pop level version of it to start off with. It's like 200 pages, but he has I think it's 1,200 pages, 2-volume, huge book called The Crucifixion of the Warrior of God. And it's his version to resolve Old Testament violence and all the questionable material that's in the Old Testament. And it basically is a long-winded thing
about. Is he an apologist?
He is I think he is a pastor and philosopher, if I remember correctly. But he's written some stuff in New Testament scholarship, if I'm recalling. But he looks at theology, and he basically says that the idea of Jesus taking on our darkness and our sins on the cross is reflective of the Old Testament. So the reason that Yahweh seems so unpleasant is because he is. And this is a very bare bones version that I'm probably representing badly, but that Yahweh is kind of reflecting that darkness of humanity as well, in the same way that Jesus took it on the cross. And so it's meant to mirror that. So you have to view that Christologically through it. I think that's how he would say it. You could have him on sometime. I'm sure that would be an interesting conversation.
I'll look him up.
He's basically like a Randall Rouser type, or Randall Rouser's like him. They just basically reject that.
Yeah.
That most of the bad stuff in the Old Testament reflects the God they know.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and there's so much of this that I like. I'm reading a book, 10 Things Christians Wish Jesus Never Taught. David Madison. I'm having him on here soon. There are things that it says in the Greek, it's right there, but it's interpreted in a different way. Or Isaiah, I create light, I create darkness, I create good, I create evil. Well, that's calamities, which means just natural disasters. That's all God's creating. There's not like anything other than that. These are the things that
it's still pretty bad.
It is pretty bad. It's still pretty bad. Yeah.
It's only natural disasters.
It's only like 200,000 people through a tsunami. That's not that bad.
You got some Christians who are the opposite, though. Some Christians that wish he didn't say turn the other cheek. They wish he would have said get violent.
That's true.
I just debated somebody like a couple weeks ago on that means something. He thought that it means to actually fight. He thinks that Christians get that wrong. I'm like, oh, so you're saying everyone's taking it out of context except for you.
How does he interpret he who lives by the sword dies by the sword?
I don't know. I didn't ask him that, but
it's a good thing.
Proud to die by the sword.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like it's like going to Valhalla.
I know. How does he think? I wonder how. Like, I would bet you that Kenneth Copeland and Joel Osteen would wish he didn't tell the people to sell their, blessed are the poor, sell all your possessions and give it to the poor. And It's hard for rich men to go to heaven, but they seem to compartmentalize that to where it doesn't apply to them.
You know what I've been wondering lately is when an evangelical goes door to door, right, knocking on people's houses, trying to save people's souls, right? Let's say that one person's like goes along with it, and they're like, okay. How do I get saved? I want to get saved, right? And the person's like, all right, all you got to do is get on your knees right now and tell Jesus Christ that you accept him as your Lord and Savior, and that's it, you're saved. Boom. They do that. The evangelical goes back to their church and says, we just got someone saved today. Everyone goes, hey. Then now the next day, that person who they got saved goes on the internet and looks up evolution and then changes their mind the next day. Is that person saved, or is that person unsaved? How does that work? Because the church, that's a win for the church. They're not going to forget that moment. They got that person saved, but the person walks away and changes their mind. So what's the deal there? Is it the moment that you die? Is that what it matters, or is it once saved, always saved? It doesn't.
Shout out Flip Flopsky. I realized I was talking to myself, not a God. That happened to me, but it took time to realize like all the prayers was really me talking to me.
I think I still do that.
Still talk to yourself?
I still talk to myself.
I
And
tell
then-
jokes to myself, and I always laugh.
Native Atheist said, come on now, you know it's all a myth, or it's a myth. Thank you for the support, my friends. I appreciate that, seriously. Let me ask you this, Caleb. I'm going to go straight to the jugular, bro. I hear this fiddling going on, though, dude. This mic thing you're doing is just...
I'm picking it up because I didn't have a good placement for it.
It's
and,
killing me.
I'm sorry.
It's
I'll
killing
set it
my ears. I'm going to need a healing here in a minute.
I'll set it down there. Hopefully that's better.
And it seems like the most likely thing, that Jesus failed in actually getting when these things would happen. Like Ian Mills, C.S. Lewis, etc., right? Christians, and say, yeah, Jesus was wrong. Don't you think that would, I mean, whether you remain a Christian or not, shouldn't you be like, whoa, hold on. Jesus got the end wrong of when these things would happen. As your question, you asked of Del C. Allison Jr., reflects this resurrection motif. Jesus, the firstborn, the first fruits. And then like this whole thing was supposed to happen. What do you make of the fact that it failed?
I think that if it did fail, it would hurt the prior probability. I don't think it would completely falsify, but it would definitely like lower the probability of of Jesus being God incarnate. And actually in the book I'm doing right now, when I have my devil's advocate chapter, that's one of the arguments I make, right? When you're looking at the priors against it, you look at stuff like, well, Jesus didn't.
That's not Derek's question.
Yes, I would think that would hurt the prior probability of it.
No. But do you believe it failed?
I haven't looked enough into it to have an opinion. So that's the.
Do you think
answer.
it's possible? And this is a great point. Thank you, Doug, for being the meanie for me.
Yeah, I'm the bad cop.
You're the bad cop. But no, he sees the point, and I'm too nice to like press in and do that. But I'm glad you bring that point up, because most Christians do exactly what you just did. I haven't looked into that. I've never really considered that. And this is what did it. This is what, the straw that broke the camel's back for me, that made me get excommunicated, was that I wanted to be faithful to the words of Jesus. He said it was going to happen. And how can God in the flesh be wrong? No, it did happen. But how we understood it is what I was wrong about. So
what verse are you really specifically talking about right now, Derek? Because if Caleb hasn't looked into it,
no, I'm sure he's.
We
aware.
can put him in the brand new atheist card today.
I'm aware of what it is. I just don't.
Not much to look into. It's just it is what it says. What it says.
Behind it, but of course, I guess my knee jerk reaction, and I think I've said this on your show before. With again, I haven't read the professional responses people bring up and stuff, but I also would say that Jesus also said nobody knows but the Father, and so you could say maybe he's not claiming that he knows for sure. He also gives parables where the coming of the person's delayed, and so people go off and do their stuff and they're not prepared when the master comes, and they get in trouble for it. So you could say that there's a lot of delay imagery in there as well, and so you have to read it all in context. And when Jesus says the whole world will have to hear, go tell the whole world, and then the Son of Man will come, well, obviously that didn't happen in the first century of them evangelizing to every nation. And so all of that could all be potentially in there as well. But I'm not saying that I'm going to be married to that explanation. If I was going to concede that he did, I would say that maybe as the incarnation, he didn't know that something only the Father knows. You could also say maybe by saying this, that this encouraged them to evangelize faster, and that if he said, I'm not going to be back for another 2,000 years, then the history of Christianity would look very differently. That's possible as well. I'm not saying I know any of those are correct or incorrect, but that's why it wouldn't be a killer for me. It would be harder. I would concede that it would hurt the chances of him being God incarnate, but I don't think it would be an absolute killer. It would depend on how good the evidence was to the contrary. So
yeah, I guess then it would go to another level of experience or something else that I can't imagine holding on to the text and stuff doing that. My friend Gary, yeah, he'll be back. I think he's asking for a link for the poker thing, I believe. Email distribution for poker. He's a really good friend of mine, Gary, too, Doug. So I really hope he can get in on the inner elite cult circle of the Satanists that you rally up for the so anyway, jump back in, Gary, when you get a chance. I think you might have lost connection. Just to point that out, you point about delay, and then there's also this imminence. There's a both. And Del Allison writes about this, of course, and at the end of the day, I don't think it's the text of it failing or not of why he's a Christian. He said he has experiences. So it comes down to that whole experience thing, like my experiences and that prayer. People talk about, I realized I was praying to myself or talking to myself. To me, that's it. Like I realized these experiences were things that I was naturally having. And eventually realizing it was me.
Right.
It was me the whole time, you know?
And Dale Allison doesn't think that the history doesn't support it. He just thinks that it doesn't help it either way. He's saying that the historical data that we have is consistent if Jesus did rise from dead, but it's consistent if he did not. So he thinks that the experience is what tips him over, but he doesn't say that like history makes him not a believer or something, that it should lower your confidence. I think he's just saying history gets us at a stalemate, and that experience gets him over the edge, as far as I'm understanding him from his work.
Truly, I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. And I've heard explanations of this. Oh, it was the Mount of Transfiguration 6 days later.
Right.
But some would not die. Nobody died. So that can't be it. Some want to argue it's Acts chapter 1 with the ascension. Come on.
You know
Could
that
it be with the fall of Jerusalem? I mean, you don't have to be a preterist to say that, if that's what he's referring to.
You know that 2 Peter addresses this very, very topic.
Yes.
Yeah.
He says, above all, you must understand that in the last days, scoffers will come, scoffing and following their own desires. They will say, where is this coming that he promised? Ever since our ancestors died, everything goes on as it has since the beginning of creation. So they're already talking about this. And when is this written? Late first century?
That's
maybe early second. I don't know.
Critical scholarship would say second, but
yeah,
anyway.
we're all over the place with that. But
like critical, skeptical scholars. Let me emphasize.
For which book?
Second Peter. Even Eusebius thought it was a forgery, by the way. So anyway,
I have most of my Christian. Sorry, I'll let him finish what he's going to say.
But still, the point is that people were talking about this 2,000 years ago. That it's already late. The fact that this is already late.
Well, it's obviously a concern of Paul's when he's writing his first letter to the Corinthians as well. Where is the resurrection when you have eyewitnesses who are already passing away?
Let me ask some if statements to Caleb. If Jesus actually said that, and if it really means end times, then Jesus was wrong, correct?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
That was easy.
And if Jesus was wrong, that means he's not God, correct?
No.
Ooh.
Okay, so then all you have to do is you have to look at all those excuses or arguments, I'll call them excuses, to say that it is still correct and see what's the most reasonable to you. And if you come to the conclusion that it really sounds like end times, and if Jesus really said this, that means he was wrong, he was deluded, and he's not God, and Christianity is false.
I mean,
and you can become a Jew today. Judaism is the one true religion, right?
Your trip. Gary's back. Hey, welcome back, Gary. Sorry, we've been deep in conversation here, man. So the private chat, though, is where you can see the email. So welcome, Manfred. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, brother.
Oh, Gary, you're the one who wants to play poker?
Yes, I am. But I don't know. Does it look laggy on my video on your end?
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out why. I'm in the Ethernet. I'm plugged into the Ethernet, so I don't know.
So I might just Canada.
No.
Someone asked me. Go ahead.
Derek, one other question. I am using a mic that I've been trying to work on. Do I sound okay?
It sounds like you're not using the mic. It sounds like it's probably coming through your computer or something.
All right, I'm going to work on it.
Okay. I'm glad you got one too now, man. I've been just nonstop. HDBE, Derek Lambert, what really made you start believing? So I'm going to ask everybody on the panel, let's do what Doug says not to do, meaning don't do the bloviation thing if you can. Try to just get to the point of what you think it is. And so asking this question, what really made you start believing? Well, I think I was already primed to believe. My parents already talked about this, especially my mom. She mentioned Jesus. I knew about angels and Noah on a flood and an ark with animals, things like that. But I think it was really the pastor was preaching about lying and that Jesus died for me. I could understand for people who care about you to do something for you you didn't ask for. It's like one of the most loving things you can do. That message of nothing's greater than a man laying down his life for a friend, et cetera, et cetera. So grabbed me. And I had a father who was an alcoholic, so I wanted a perfect father too. And I won't get into all the details, but it was very difficult emotionally and trauma-wise. And so I had this relationship with this God in my head, and through the experience that I had that day, a warm, fuzzy, in my tummy feeling, and it's what made me really grab onto it, and I just kept digging in. That's what started for me. I guess.
Yeah, mine's very much the same.
Yeah.
I think I always believed, and I made a decision. I think I made a decision when I was like 5, and I was so insulated that I was rather surprised. I recall actually going to see Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade at the theaters on opening night. So this was like this would have been the 80s still, I think. And walking home from the theater with my friends, got into a conversation, was honestly astonished to discover that there was anybody out there who had doubts about the historicity of Moses or the patriarchs, or didn't believe in 6 days ago. I was so insulated. I probably would have been like a preteen at that time, junior high school kind of age. So like for me, this is the world I grew up in. There was never a decision made to believe, I don't think.
Caleb?
Yeah, I would say that originally I was raised in a fairly religious household. About my teenage, probably more around college is when I started having more of an agnostic phase, and then I went back to being religious, but not as fundamentalist as I was. And I think it was questions about existence, about morality, and about the supernatural and what that exists is kind of what tipped me over the edge a little bit. So.
We're going straight down to Doug. Down you go.
Indoctrination, living in a bubble, not looking at the other side. That's it.
What about you, Neil?
So Christianity gave me something to grab onto to make myself feel special, like I was chosen, like I was better than everyone else. This is just me. I'm not speaking for all Christians. I'm just saying for me. At the time, when I'm looking around at all my friends and they're all being successful, starting businesses, getting married, and I'm in and out of prison and getting in trouble and all this crazy stuff, drug addiction. And it was Christianity was like, no, you're the chosen one. No, you're the saved one. Everyone else is wrong. Everyone else is condemned, but you're the chosen one. That's why I got into Christianity.
Gary?
Why I got into Christianity?
You're pretty loud, by the way.
Now that's too loud.
Yeah, it's peaking. It's okay.
Right,
hey, we're experimenting. It's fine.
Yeah,
turn your gain down.
A little bit better. A little bit.
All right. Yeah. Why I got into Christianity?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so I was born and raised in the Mormon Church. My family background actually goes all the way back to the beginnings of the Mormon Church back in Nauvoo, Illinois. So it's deep in my family history, and so it's not like I sought out a religion and thought, well, this is the one I'm going to join. But what I did do is I thought, well, this is my religion. It's my family history. So I'm going to make sure I defend it and understand why it's better than any other religion.
Wow. Yeah, I felt that way too. I wanted to defend. Once I had that relationship, that connection, that experience, and coupled with these ideas, I wanted to defend them when I heard people challenge them, like Doug, people that were out there trying to say, why do you believe this? No, this isn't true. And I got into apologetics as well. And that led me to trying to go deeper and to understand these things. So that's a great point. Thank you, guys. I just wanted to address that.
Then I started watching Pine Creek and MythVision and Apologia. That was it. Never turned back.
Yeah, I think Doug's having a war with someone in the comment section or something.
Oh, not just one person, several. It's fun.
Wow.
Oh
There's always something going on in the chat. That's something that, you don't even notice.
Racist, and JoJo talking about, but it's not about the end times. It's about people seeing Moses and Elijah. I mean, come on.
What, the New Testament?
I think
that one verse that I brought up earlier.
No, yeah, without a doubt. He will come with his angels, repaying each man according to their deeds. Like this is that wheat, the wheat and the chaff, the goat and the sheep final judgment idea, which is why people became full preterist to say this is actually 70 AD. They made everything about that. And
what do you think about the soldiers in the sky Josephus talks about during the fall of Jerusalem? Do you think that has anything to do with it?
I asked this of John J. Collins, right? Because I'd like to know. I think everybody on the panel, other than maybe Kip, are kind of like, we've read some, but people who have specialties like Kip, he's read like literature surrounding the literature and looked at bigger pictures of things. But John J. Collins said this is a common motif. Armies in the clouds is known in Greco-Roman literature. It's not just in Christian literature and Jewish literature. So this idea, when I thought this is a special circumstance to prove those armies in the cloud were Jesus, coming back, which I, as a preterist, believed that was the case. Mm-hmm. He said, no, this is a common motif. When ugly times came and it was warfare, they would say things like, the armies are coming in the clouds. So I thought it was interesting, too, because he says some other weird stuff in that same passage about a calf giving birth to a lamb or some crazy, come on.
Could have been a deformed with a severe mutation or something, right?
Yeah, let's be literal, right? Let's try to.
It's a crocoduck.
Crocoduck, yeah. I don't know. A lot of times you see that happen where people say it's something and it's some other animal, like where they say it's an animal and it turns out to be like chupacabra, right? Is wolves that have diseases where the hair falls out and people find the bodies and they think it's a
Did you
monster.
say wolves?
So, not wolves or whatever dog it is. What is it? Wolves?
No, it's a wolf. That's what
wolves.
I was
getting. Wolves with a V. My bad.
There you go.
With a V. Yeah.
What do you guys think of this? Like, the older I get, the more maybe it's just because I'm becoming more cantankerous with age, but I do think that for many Christians, if they became convinced that there's chicanery going on in the New Testament, that Paul was actually not a good guy, and that the gospel authors might have purposely, they knew better, but they might have purposely did some mistruthing. I think you have to be out at that point, right? And I think there is some evidence to show these things. That it's just not, they had sincere beliefs that this is true and so forth. But what do you guys think of that idea of, no, they knew better, but they purposely wrote these things knowing that it was wrong?
This gets into that same question that me and Gary were actually reaching out to a historian about Joseph Smith, because if we're going to use an analogy, we really need something to grab a hold of that we can prove. Was Joseph Smith a complete fraud? Is really the question. Is he a fakery? Is he doing the chicanery, whatever you call it? Is he BSing people? And the answer is yes. But does he actually believe in what he's doing? And the answer is yes. And it's so messed up.
Yeah, a greater good argument, right? Like, they know they're kind of bending things, but it's for the best.
Well, that's the weird part about. Go ahead, Gary.
Maybe. I don't know how my sound is, but
it's good.
Is that a little bit better? Okay, you know what? This sucks because now I'm just going through my AirPods, and the AirPods sound better than the damn microphone, Gary.
You were peaking, man. You were peaking.
I don't know how to use it. And I think it was making this laggy, but I just think that, for Joseph Smith, and really my own family history, William Clayton was his scribe, and that's who my ancestor is. And I have, reading his journals, what really, yes, like in the beginning, Joseph Smith is probably trying to appease this weird relationship between his mother and father who can't agree on religion. A father with a magical worldview, a mother with a Methodist worldview. And so some of it, the greater good, is that he starts out with, trying to reconcile issues between his parents. But I think that has to evolve as you begin to gain power. You begin to realize that you can influence lots of people. We see this, I think, on even YouTube and TikTok. You start out innocently, you get a bunch of followers, realize the power that you have, and then you end up like Joe Rogan or something like that. But I think that it evolves, and I think it's a little of both.
Yeah, and just to get into Paul, the this is why I have Christopher Stanley. There's an episode I'm going to be dropping soon. I might as well plug it just to let everybody know. I don't know exactly what day I'm going to plug this, but is understanding what Paul's doing with Scripture might help us better understand, like, what is he up to? Let me see if I can find this thumbnail so you guys can kind of get. Did Paul misuse Scripture? Is actually what I'm titling it. And here it is.
Yeah, you talking about the misquoting?
Yeah, this one specifically, though, I haven't launched this. Christopher Stanley shows when Paul says it is written, and you see how he's using the text. It does not mean at all what the original text he's quoting means. But this is a common thing that Jews did, especially rabbis. All of them did this. So is it they're up to negative bad shenanigans? Not so much. If I were to try and psychoanalyze for 2,000 years removed Paul, I've said this earlier, I think he's a charismatic guy who's like completely superstitious in his thinking. He really believes the end is about to happen tomorrow or next Thursday or next Saturday or 2 weeks from now, but it's going to happen soon. So don't get married, all that nonsense that we hear. And at the same time, while the end hasn't happened, he has to keep this process going. He has to feed the poor. So now he has to dabble with money, simultaneously dealing with this issue of his real beliefs of the end happening soon. And he believes he's a last day prophet. Paul is this last day prophet that God knew the number of hairs on his head before he was born. And of course, he seems to be this guy who thinks the end is going to happen soon. So I don't know. Some people think Paul was up to more negative stuff with money and all that.
Wait, isn't there evidence of that within the New Testament text itself? Because in several locations, he himself, and then in Acts, talks about or is combating this idea. Hey guys, I'm not doing this for the money. Like, I'm not honest. Like he seems like he's protesting too much. And so that tells me, so that tells me that there were people in the first century who knew Paul saying, you're a shyster. You're doing this for the money and the power. And he's going, no. Like, everyone has the right to work and make money. Yes. And like, I think it's 1 Corinthians 9 where he pushes back, and 2 Corinthians 9 and 1 Corinthians 9. You can sort of see this. And then I think somewhere in Acts, early Acts too.
And he's constantly alluding to how he's sort of opposing James and Peter, how their way,
like a power struggle. Yeah.
You can sort of get that.
And he admits he's clever, right?
He says this. He says, I am to the Jews a Jew. I am to the pagans a pagan. I am to everyone, whoever they are, basically. He says
all things to all men.
Yeah. And if one didn't want to like read into that negative, you still have this problem with understanding Paul. 2 Peter, whoever the forger is writing this, is saying like Paul's hard to understand. I know, like he's difficult to get. Why are they saying this? Did Paul say some things that are hard to swallow, and like now they're having to try and kind of do an apologetic to fix the problem? Maybe that seems to be what all these I'm sorry. No, I was just saying that this is the problem I had when I had Mike Licona on, was like, hey, don't most critical scholars? And he's like, no, most critical scholars actually think Mark is dated early. And one's an agnostic scholar, said it's dated in the 40s. I got a text message from Johanna Janes's dad, okay? Because I'm friends with him on WhatsApp. And this is what he said. Hi, Derek. I was watching your interview with Mike Licona just to note that we had James Crossley, the skeptical Bible scholar over here in the UK, to come to our London meeting in 2019. It was all about the dating of the Gospel of Mark. He told us that when he wrote about his views that Mark might be early and written in the 40s, that he was very young and that he has since become skeptical of his own views in this. Certainly in front of us, he seemed like he was very unsure he would still make that case. He wasn't at all comfortable with the way evangelicals have seized upon in early dating of Mark in the 40s. He even said he was very tentative back then. Also, some scholars are tempted to take a more radical view and see how it's fair with the critics. He told us he probably wouldn't argue that with much force today. So this is the case of evangelicals using someone's older work in a die-hard fashion.
Right.
I think we may have his discussion on audio somewhere, so I will check to see if I can find it. Andrew.
he also doesn't think he also thinks Mark is mostly midrash anyway. James Crossley doesn't think that Mark is like meant to be historical narrative. So even if you were to grant his views, I don't think that would help you with that position necessarily. But I think, to my understanding, I think most scholars date Mark to about 70, maybe a few years before, but generally it's about 70, and Matthew is in the 80s. And most, although I know that Derek has friends who want to push Acts all the way to 150. The majority views tends to be about 85 to 90ish, and John's 90
Caleb,
to 105.
But
did you know we have an actual picture of the Apostle Paul from the first century?
Do you watch that show?
Oh, I love that show.
It's a great
Johanna's
show.
dad-
I was explaining it to Derek. He hadn't heard of it.
Johanna's dad made a good point, though, is that apologists love to use old sources for new problems. Like Prophet Azad just had a video came out, I think a couple days ago, and he was picking apart this video from an apologist, and they were like, the question in the video was, can we trust the Bible or something like that? Can we trust the archaeology? Does archaeology prove the Bible to be true? This person took quotes from the 1800s. To
be fair, Neil, I mean, that's true. And Craig's stuff on the resurrection, for example, goes back to the 70s and 80s. So his stuff's outdated. So I'll pick on him. But to be fair, people like Bob Price still cite people like the Dutch radicals of the 18th century. So it's not unique. I mean, that's on both sides. I think it's bad either way. But
yeah, but the point is, this is what they did. They took a couple quotes from the 1800s, early 1900s, and says, there's your answer, and ended it right there.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I was back to Paul, though. Paul, I think, is a marketing genius. He's marketing Christianity to a Greek audience. He knows how to do it. He knows what they like. He knows what they don't like, because they don't want circumcision. They want to eat their pork still. So I'm going to sell it to them the way they want it. And he packaged it right, and it worked.
He went above and beyond, because he goes so far to make them equal to the Jews. And no, buddy, you can't get away with that, because that is going to cause even more tension and problems amongst Jewish Christians and these people who are joining in, and they like skip all the hard stuff, and they're on the same level as a person who did the difficult route, was the good boy who stayed at home with his father while the prodigal son went and did whatever, to give you an analogy. But real quick, before we continue, let me give you these super chats real fast. The Abe Tate, thank you for that super chat. Did y'all investigate miracle claims, charismatic movement? After text critical, miracle claims were the last straw. Research 4 months, day in and out. So can the panel comment to this in particular? I know the charismatic movement and their claims and the way that they were, there was so many leaders that were dying of cancer and illnesses claiming to heal others of it. These were so many red flags early on, even before I left Christianity, that I was like, that version that I came out of is BS. Like, it's all about money. It's all about power and control and word of faith type stuff. So I did. And then it was later that text critical stuff came on the scene. Did you guys?
I went to a Pentecostal church for a few years. So yeah, I used to make fun of the healing pastors that come in. I remember one time he went to a restaurant after the church service, and I was there too. And I said, "This is how you did this leg lengthening thing." So me and my cousin, he sat down, and I started going, "This is how you do it, right?" And he just walked away.
I can see you doing that. Oh my God.
And I'm a Christian. I'm going, come on, you're giving us a bad name, you stupid guy. Like you're
I had
a
a buddy
shyster.
who did it to a guy, like on stage while he was pulling on his shoe.
My question is, why are there so many people with short legs? Like, is it just that common a thing? Like,
I know.
why? I was wondering. That's like, how many people have this problem with one leg short than the other? Is like, that's unusual. But no, I'm not an apologist for the charismatic movement as a whole. I think a lot of it is fraud, so I'm not going to defend everything out there, and I think a lot of it's not substantiated. So I want medical evidence and in those cases, and I guess I would ask Nate which ones he's referring to specifically. Certainly, there's
it's not Nate. I think it was someone else. I just popped.
Sorry. I did. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
You did. But whoever sent that, I would ask which ones he's looking into, because certainly there's a lot of them I would agree that I wouldn't defend, but there's some of them that I think are more interesting. So it really just depends on the case. And I would never advocate for someone to be healed and then not see a doctor first. I think if you think you're healed, that's great, but go make sure you check with your doctor before you stop taking your medicine and all that, because you don't want to hurt yourself, and plenty of people have hurt themselves, and that's not okay.
Appreciate that advice. Nate, this is Gary. You're going to start this one off, my friend. Nate Battle, I hope I'm saying that right. Thank you for the super chat. Interesting question, by the way, or statement. The Book of Mormon was about Israelites and Jews. Why don't the so-called Jewish people claim it versus who does? Joseph Smith claimed to be an Israelite.
I mean, I would say, first of all, I mean, the Jewish people don't accept the New Testament either. But for what it's worth, the Book of Mormon is about a group of people that left Jerusalem at the time of Isaiah or the time of Zedekiah, right, 600 or 550 BC or something like that, sailed to America and established Christianity before Christ in the Americas. I think the thing about Joseph Smith claiming to be an Israelite, I think what's important to understand about really any religious figure as they are trying to claim authority is that, you know, as things evolve within your religious organization or your cult, you have to show people that are following you why you are the authority over someone else. And you know, and we see this even in, you know, the scholarly works or critical scholars of the Bible. Different religious leaders will claim that they are the line of David or whatever to claim their special authority. So Joseph Smith did that for sure. He started out by claiming special authority through John the Baptist, but that expanded to Peter, James, and John. It even expanded to him claiming authority from Abraham. I think there was a previous comment where someone mentioned that the facsimile from the Book of Abraham is what caused them to leave the Mormon Church. But that, just so you know, that's really what was happening when Joseph Smith authored or put together the Book of Abraham, was a claim of authority to the Abrahamic priesthood. So it's like it wasn't enough to claim John the Baptist, Jesus, or, you know, whoever. We got to go all the way back to Abraham, which is what happened with that.
It's an authoritarian view of making him superior in some way, which there clearly is racism even in Joseph Smith's ideas. But also what I found interesting is this British Israelitism that we find prevailing in European countries, and the Europeans were doing this all over the place. Joseph Smith sounds very similar to this.
Yeah, it was 19th century ideas about where did the Native Americans come from, right? And we see some of this today. This is why I get concerned about Christian nationalism, is that there's this need to make your nation special, either through some religious lens. Obviously, that will always get you into trouble, but that was definitely happening with not just Joseph Smith, but a lot of people around him. So if this is God's country, then who are these natives here? They're not European, they're not white. Well, they must. So in the Book of Mormon, they were for sure originally Israelite or Jewish or Hebrew or whatever you want to say, but then they became unrighteous and their skin was darkened, which is what you're talking about with the racist piece. Derek. But that was definitely not unique to the Mormon Church in the 19th century. It was common amongst, you know, all Europeans that were, you know, colonizing America during the 19th century.
More reason to just let go, like move on, you know, bad ideas. And of course, the church itself has evolved its meaning of these ideas. These ideas are not taught today, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong. They're not out here preaching that the white and delightful, right, are the special people, right, and the dark skin are evil. Or are they still teaching this stuff incognito?
Yeah, I think that I think so. So, for example, with the Mormon Church, there's a gospel topic essay about race and the priesthood, where the church officially denounces that there is any connection between skin color and righteousness, right? And so it denounces all of these past ideas, and yet the Book of Mormon still does say that the Lamanites were cursed and their skin was darkened because they weren't as righteous, and they were being differentiated from their more righteous white brothers. That's not removed from the Book of Mormon, even though the church denounces it. But I think the other thing too is putting forth a denouncement in 2015 or giving blacks the priesthood in 1978 and just changing the policy and then pretending it didn't happen will never change 150 years of culture, right? So 150 years of people that are members of this church or any other religion who have been taught this, and they teach their children, their children's children. You have to make some very deliberate efforts if you want to root that out of your church. You have to constantly teach that it was wrong. That never happened. It's just the policy changes and we pretend that it never happened. And that just won't work in changing culture.
Thank you, Gary. And
Nate, I want to address Nate's super chat.
Yeah.
Sorry, Derek.
No, please.
Nate, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but Lehi didn't come from northern Israel. He was in Jerusalem, and so that was now I guess you're right in saying that. I think that the claim later was that Lehi was from the tribe of Manasseh. But anyway, just whatever. It's made up. So.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It is interesting to learn how they thought, why, all that fun stuff. But that's for nerds like me. Anyway.
Well, it's an attempt to explain, right, and create your authority for why your religion's the true form of Christianity and the true religion.
Like, one general comment about Mormonism and how it relates to Christianity is we have so much great evidence for Mormonism, both for and against.
Yeah,
which we don't have for Christianity. Like,
yeah,
like from let's say prior to 60 AD, what do we have about Paul that Paul didn't write? Nothing, right? We have absolutely nothing. We don't know anything about Paul really, other than what the New Testament says. Whereas with Mormonism, we have a ton of stuff about Joseph Smith's life that wasn't written by his followers. I bet you if we had a time machine, we would find so much dirt on Paul even after he converted. I mean, it's just, but if a Christian actually agrees with what I just said, they're out. I mean, we just have all the positive stuff about Paul, except for when he's self-deprecating, but he's using that for like a clever technique.
Or I did not lie. He says it like 8 or 9 times, and I'm not lying.
Yeah,
I tell you the truth. It's like, who thinks you're lying? I want to talk to them.
Pine Creek, is your name Doug?
Yes, past tense of Dig.
Okay, Doug. Well, Doug, I'll say this. Growing up in the church, all we heard from church, lesson manuals, etc., were the positive things about Joseph Smith. So it's similar, but ironically, Joseph Smith was surrounded by men, including my great-great-grandfather, who were prolific documenters, and they did document everything. And so, yeah, I think if we had that same kind of documentation.
Wait, your great-great-grandfather rubbed shoulders with Joseph Smith?
Was William Clayton. He was a scribe. So he wrote the Doctrine and Covenants section on the reason that we. So when Hiram Smith came to Joseph Smith and said, "Hey, I have an idea of how we can convince Emma to practice polygamy, write this new doctrine, this new revelation," the person who wrote it, scribed it, was William Clayton. And my mom is a Clayton. I'm a Clayton on my mom's side.
That's amazing.
That's crazy.
So I have a lot of knowledge about the history, and I've done my own YouTube podcasts on William Clayton, his experience with polygamy. I'll tell you one other story really quickly that I can't. This is the one story that really kills me about this history, is that William Clayton, my great grandmother was Margaret Moon, and her sister was Martha. So William Clayton married Martha, second wife, but it was all secret in Nauvoo. No one knew that polygamy was happening. It was kept secret. And William Clayton writes this in his journals. This was it's supposed to be secret. And guess what happens to Martha? She gets knocked up, but she's not supposed to be pregnant. She's not married. And so
virgin birth?
Well, well, so that's right. So William Clayton, in his journal, goes to Joseph Smith and says, "How is it that I'm going to explain this? Martha's pregnant, and I'm not supposed to be married to her. We're not supposed to be having sex. So what do I do?" Joseph Smith's response to William Clayton, and this is documented in his journal. Joseph Smith's response to William Clayton was, "Just confess that you had an affair with Martha. You're the father. We will excommunicate you, but then we'll bring you right back into the church." So it just shows you how secretive it all really was, the whole stuff with polygamy.
Yeah. The thing is, there's probably guys like you who were related to Paul, like the great nephew or something, saying, I know Paul was a shyster, but they, maybe they did, right? But they would have to be wealthy and literate and all these things. And it's like,
right.
And would it have survived
all the circumstances in which like Paul lived? The chances of getting any kind of surviving counter testimony are just almost non-existent. It's so insignificant.
Hey, just real quick for everybody, let me put Gary up here actually. For those who don't know, Gary is a good friend of mine. I want to give a quick special plug for his YouTube channel, Topic Discuss. So please go subscribe. He talks about a lot of interesting stuff, but he also takes recommendations. So if you're wanting to hear more on this, you can literally go on his channel, comment, "Hey, I want to hear more on Mormonism. I want to hear more about this. I want to hear more about that." And he'll do a topic discussion on that very issue. And really, Gary is a great guy. I know him personally. And so please do so.
Thank you, Derek. Yeah, for example, we did one on Calvinism and you were our guest, and we learned a lot.
Yep, I was not predestined to be a believer, obviously. But yeah, I just wanted to do a special shout out for him. And one more super chat from Scholar Vid is, Caleb, do you think that teaching kids that they are born in sin is child abuse? If not, why not?
So I don't necessarily hold to the doctrine of total depravity because I'm not a Calvinist. So the idea of like people being or original sin, like that you literally inherit sin as if it's some genetic disorder. I wouldn't argue that. I think I would teach my kids that they're not perfect, that we all mess up, but I don't think that's anything outside of what anyone else would teach, right? So if we're defining sin as lack of perfection, then I don't see anything wrong with that or dishonest about that.
Why are people going to hell? Let's dig a little deep here. Are they going to hell? You obviously have a universalist position. He's a universalist, but a different kind of universalist, maybe
Christian universalist, not pluralist. People get this mixed up.
Right. So you're an annihilationist for non-Christians who don't believe, but for Christians, how is it?
No, I'm not an annihilationist. It's hell is real, but hell is basically a purgatorial state where people repent in hell and eventually come to Jesus. And so hell is the secondary state in that sense. I'm sure that would be. It's funny that I saw you calling Bob Price earlier about the different views of hell. So I would have asked him about universalism if I was on here. That would be cool. But I did a debate with Chris Date, he's a Calvinist and he has a ministry called Rethinking Hell, and he's very big into annihilationism. And we were debating universalism versus annihilationism. And it's funny because when we were prepping for the debate, I was we were laying out his stuff, and I was like, okay, so this is going to be like philosophy and exegesis. And he said, well, you can do philosophy, but I'm only going to focus on scripture. And I was like, so you don't care at all about? He's like, well, you can do philosophical arguments, but I'm not going to try to rebut them because I care about exegesis. I don't care about philosophy. And I was like, well, that's going to be a hard debate to do then, because I'm going to focus a lot on philosophical arguments as well as scripture. So we still had it.
You're going to get Doug to start poking. Why are you doing philosophy? The Bible says.
I know. But I don't think there should be an
serve this day whom you will serve, philosophy or God.
Yeah. But I thought that was a fun debate if anyone wants to check it out. It's funny because both of us said like this is going to be the next generation of hell debates, and eternal conscious torment's just going to go away anyway. And we both agree that eternal conscious torment's pretty bad.
If your beliefs on hell are true, why would anyone become a Christian now? Because let's say they're doubting that's rather true, but maybe they're 80% confident it's true. So, but if you've got like any doubts, well, your doubts will be all relieved after death. And then if you got this state to change your mind after the death, why not wait for better evidence?
Well, I think that that's a common question that gets brought up, but I think that there's a lot of benefits to having faith and to being a Christian in this life. I think that certain actions you take and having that kind of discipline is a beneficial thing, and so I don't think that Christianity is just fire insurance for hell.
What's the benefits of being a Christian today?
Well, I think that having the community is a beneficial thing. I think that having that kind
I have poker nights. What's next?
That's good. That's good. That's good. I think that generally speaking, the studies that I've seen, religious people tend to live longer and to be happier because of mental health, and I think suicide rates among atheists are generally higher. But
but that's because of the community aspect, which you can replace with other with secular things like bowling.
I'm not sure if it is the community. I mean, that's part of it, I would say, but I think that there is psychosis that comes behind it. I think that religion has an evolutionary benefit for reasons, and I think that it's here to stay regardless of whether we like it or not.
So I do just want to jump in and say it is inaccurate to say that suicide is higher in the atheist community, unless you have data that we can look at. For example, in Utah, which is predominantly Mormon, and Idaho, our states are amongst the highest of suicide rates. Now, I know that Christians out there would say, well, that's because you guys aren't Christian. But still, they're religious communities with very high suicide rates.
Yeah, if your view of the afterlife is true, then that's incentive for a Christian to commit suicide, because they're not going to go to hell automatically, right?
Sorry, I was looking up a study.
Like, if you can get to heaven quicker by committing suicide as a Christian, then why not do it?
Well,
I don't think you would get to heaven quicker, though, because no one's saying that you could skip the intermediate phase, right? That you probably are going to pile more stuff on that you're going to have to go through.
Now, if you go out and die and martyr for it at the end, maybe you can make up for all that. Skip the purgatory state,
Okay.
The Abe Tate, real quick, thanks for that super chat. If Christians demanded the same evidence for biblical miracle claims as they do modern miracle claims, they'd see Paul as an ancient Benny Hinn.
Yeah, that's funny.
No, I'm just kidding with you.
No, you're good.
I was waiting for the funny part too.
I was like, no, thank you for that super chat. I appreciate it. Abe, you're looking for numbers right now, Caleb.
No, I was just, from what I just pulled up. This is American Journal of Psychiatry, 2004. Religious affiliation suicide attempt. The conclusion is that religious affiliation is associated with less suicidal behavior in depressed patients. After other factors were controlled, it was found that the greater moral objections to suicide and lower aggression level in religiously affiliated subjects may function as protective factors against suicide attempts. Further study about the influence of religious affiliation on aggressive behavior and how moral objections can reduce the probability of acting on suicidal thoughts may offer new therapeutic strategies in suicide prevention. So it sounds to me like because suicide is very taboo in religious circles, that is partially why the study is attributing that to lower rates. But you have people like Camille.
And it's an old study. It's 2004.
It's 15 years old. I mean, if we have other recent ones that say different things, that's fine.
But I can buy that. Like, if you think by ending your own life it'll get worse, if you truly believe in eternal conscious torment and suicide's the direct pathway there, I can understand. Okay, I'll make best of this life, I guess.
When you were on Camille's show, I believe he said, it was Nathan's show with Camille, I believe he was an advocate of suicide. He didn't think there was anything necessarily wrong with it under certain circumstances, right?
Yeah.
That also doesn't mean that they don't want to commit suicide. That doesn't mean they're not depressed. It doesn't make them. Doesn't mean religion is the reason. It just means makes them scared. But I'm guessing.
You're not wrong. I think that's certainly true for a lot of people as well. I think people try to escape pain, and I think that we should be trying to lessen pain on this earth that motivates them to commit suicide in the first place, right?
But when you're talking about suicide and religion might help prevent that, notice you said religion and not Christianity.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm not aware of a study that says that Christianity in particular is better against it than other religions. But I don't think that. I think most of the benefits in that tend to go with religious belief. But I think your question is if you're saying why be a Christian, not convert to something else, that would be a different question. But I thought the way that you originally framed it, it sounded like you were saying why believe at all if you're going to have that particular thing in there. Oh, he agreed he has the right to die. Yeah, he does. By the way, actually, I'm for that. For legally, I'm not against. I think euthanasia should be legal if the person is conscious enough to be able to say it. If it's a family member making a decision, that's a little bit harder. But if the person is within their right mind and wants to end their life, I think that they have the right to do that, even if I think it's morally questionable. But I think that legally it should be allowed. There are lots of things I want to be legal that I don't agree that are moral. I think that's the point of living in a society where people have different opinions than you.
You and that mic, Caleb. You love to do this.
You really hate that mic, don't you?
I know I can hear everything, man. I can hear everything. I'm sure everybody watching probably can too. But anyway, no, we've had quite a fun discussion. Where do we go from this? I mean, like, where do we go? Do we convert, or are you like? Who's doing the converting here, Caleb? Are we supposed to go on your side?
Caleb, I want to get saved right now. What do I do?
No, I was gonna just make the comment to Doug from something we said earlier. I was just messaging Testify, and he said that he does like you, that he appreciates you looking at his videos and linking them in your channel because it helps his video traffic. So that sounds very positive to me. Yeah.
He likes me for only what I can do for him.
Maybe, yeah. That's what it's
true Christian love.
I did see a comment earlier from Converse Contender. He was in the chat earlier. I don't know if you're still here, Converse, but he was talking about how Paul, like, he was kind of defending what's going on in 1 Corinthians 9 with Paul. Like, Paul's not asking for money. But this is the problem. This is why I like having people like Dr. Bob on, and then I have people who are more, I guess you'd say, fit more into a conservative bubble of Pauline scholarship, where Dr. Price will say, this sounds so like it's contradictory in its own way. Like, look, how come these guys get money, get paid, can be married, can do this, can do that, 1 Corinthians 9. And then he goes on to give this, it is written, muzzle oxen. Does God care about animals? No, he's talking about me. And then he goes on, but I'm not asking for any money. And you're like, okay, is this a lesson? What is he trying to say? Is he not trying to press them to say, feed the poor, give me your money to feed the poor? And it's really odd. And so Dr. Bob thinks that later on, people are trying to defend Paulinist, or adding things in there to make Paul maybe look like he's not really trying to beg for your money, like Benny Hinn.
Like in Hebrews.
Right. Or you have others who would maybe come on in a more conservative sense and try to point out something isn't adding up here. It just doesn't make any sense. He's saying they can get money? What the heck? And isn't it written for me? I'm that oxen. I'm the guy who's working my butt off and you're not paying me, but I don't want your money. I really don't want your money, but how come they can get your money? I'm so confused by Paul. I don't know what to make of this guy.
Did Paul write Hebrews or someone else did?
No, someone else did.
Well, whoever wrote that, it's like, hey, remember that story in Genesis where Abraham gives 1/10 of everything he owns to this guy named Melchizedek? Well, that order, that's what we're going to do now. So just give it to us. We're the order of Melchizedek now. It's like, damn, that was a slick way to ask for 1/10 of everyone's stuff.
Do you think that Paul was making more money as a Pharisee than he was after he converted?
I don't know. There's a large Gentile community out there, and the women in his
how
church.
was he making money as a Pharisee?
Right.
Didn't people give to the temple?
The synagogues?
But
Did
now
the Sanhedrin get a stipend?
Now he's a private contractor going out and he's his own entity at this point, making his own money basically.
He was
a tent maker, right?
Sanhedrin, was he?
Yeah, he was.
He was just a Pharisee.
He made.
I don't think he specifies. I don't think he specifies if he's on the Sanhedrin or not.
How come the Talmud never mentions him? Because it mentions Gamaliel. He says he was raised up at the foot of Gamaliel. That was his teacher. The Talmud talks about Gamaliel a lot. Never talks about Paul.
Does it mention Caiaphas? I don't know. Does it?
The whole first century is written about in depth.
A few times,
Yeah, just never mentions Paul.
I'm
Because
this is true.
I just made a connection. Like all those revival tent people. They put up these tents and do revivals and they ask for money. Paul was a tent maker. And he said, remember this, those who plant few seeds will have a small harvest, but those who plant a lot will have a big harvest. He sounds exactly like Benny Hinn. And then he says in 2 Corinthians 9, so I thought that I should ask these brothers to come there before we do. They will help in getting together the generous gift you promised. then they'll be ready when we come. So he's basically saying, he's expecting a very generous gift from people. And then he talks about, the sowing the seed, just like Benny Hinn does. And then he says, but it's for the poor.
Think about this. One thing to throw out there, and I want everybody's thoughts if you have a thought on this. Galatians, when he says he went to go see in Jerusalem, he went to the Jerusalem church, and there's James and Peter. I think in the first round, it was only Peter. I can't remember exactly how this went, but he's presenting his gospel to them, and they approve as long as he remembers the poor, which meant bring that money to the table. And they approve. But then I do read Galatians this way. I think that he is trying to say, they screwed me. They approved of my gospel. I'm bringing money in, and now they have people, these spies from the Jerusalem church that are coming over here. And I confronted Peter to his face. I really do see that he is now upset because we had a deal, man. I bring you money. You let me do what I do. You approve of my message. And now they're trying to go behind him and proselytize these Gentiles, fixing the problem, it seems.
See, this is the problem with the shortage of counter narratives that we have.
Yeah.
We just have no idea we've got Paul's word about most of this stuff, and who's to say different?
Kip, do you think that we would have? This is a genuine question. I'm not trying to press you on it. Do you think that we would have? Do you think that we would have something like that in Contra Kelsum or a dialogue with Trypho? Because for example, we do have polemics about the disciples stole the body. We have polemics about Jesus, Ben Bar Pantera, that Mary was just sleeping around with Roman soldiers.
Right.
All that stuff. Do you think that there would have been people out there that this might have been preserved if there were Jews out there saying these things?
Yeah, I don't know enough about, like, these are the texts that we no longer have, right? That have been cited by who is it, Origen or Tertullian?
Origen does Contra Kelsum. I think Justin Martyr does dialogue with Trypho. Yeah.
Right. And when were they? So they were contemporaries, right? Trypho and they were contemporaries.
It's like the middle of the 2nd century, I think.
Second century.
Yeah,
well,
like
the sources are later than that, but they're quoting from sources from the 2nd century, I think.
Right.
So Origen's writing the 3rd century. He's quoting from the 2nd century.
Yeah.
So even at that
think
point,
my problem goes back to, like, you're still talking about 100 years. Like, it's 100 years. Think about what was going on 100 years ago. And now, try and imagine, getting or communicating and transmitting and conveying that kind of information in a culture without photographs, without, television cameras, without radio equipment, without literacy, and without printing presses and typewriters and newspapers and all these things. So it's so much time, and it's in conditions where information does not travel. Accurate information does not travel nearly as well as it does today. So I think that's, like, for me, it's even if there was information like that in Trypho or Celsus, like, and I'm not sure. I mean, who knows? But like, how we just don't have any way of accurately tracking that kind of thing all the way back to the 1st century, which is why we're just stuck in this problem, and there's no way out of it. The fact that we've got Paul and, like, no one else offering any kind of counter narrative. And my own opinion of that is because it just makes such a, like what Paul was doing and what the early church was doing made just such a minuscule dent culture that almost nobody else anywhere cared.
Exactly. That's what I was just about to say.
And by the way, Pharisee's not really a job. It's more of a, like, it's more of a, I mean, how do you
a
put
sect?
it?
tradition.
It's a sect.
Yeah.
It's
Sect
a
of
way of
Judaism.
thinking about.
So he was just a tent maker,
religion.
and then he became a Benny Hinn tent maker.
By the way, he was from the tribe of Benjamin too. So,
Hey,
Wow,
But
whatever
listen,
that's worth.
I know I'm joking, but listen, this is what bothers me about people who use Josephus and Tacitus and Suetonius as these primary sources. First of all, Suetonius and Tacitus are in the 120s. So, and Josephus is written in 96. So it's like Paul already wrote all his stuff.
And you have to be.
The Gospels are
You have
already.
to be.
So why is it such a big deal that Josephus writes a sentence in his giant book of stories? He writes a little paragraph, and that's all of a sudden, look, we have evidence. What?
But I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to. Sorry, go ahead, Kip.
No, I was just going to say you just have to, and you have to be really, really, really careful when you're using Josephus, because he's writing within his own program. He's got his own agenda at work, and as a result of that, it significantly affects the way he tells the stories.
Right. But the point is, he's writing this well after Christianity's already out in the public sphere. But and Tacitus and Suetonius and Pliny the Elder, Pliny the Younger, the later 2nd century people who start writing about Christianity for the first time, they act like they've barely heard of it. Like by the time it gets to the 2nd century, it's still a tiny little group of it's a tiny little movement. It's not that big yet.
Well, and did Josephus even mention Paul?
No,
No,
never.
no, not
Some people
Paul.
think he does, but he never says Paul of
Yeah, I
Tarsus.
don't think he. Yeah,
I
I
would
think
agree.
he does.
I would agree with that. I don't think he mentions Paul.
No, he doesn't.
But
There's a Saul that he mentions that some people think he'll be the Paul, but it's
No.
not. It's like a little tiny sentence of some guy named Saul. It has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah,
It's
because
not
there was
related to
never a
Jesus,
king
yeah.
in Israel named Saul. That's never
Right.
happened. But real quick, Mr. Monster, thank you again for helping me understand Daniel 9 prophecies, how it was written after the events that happened, as if it was to make it seem it was prophecy. You're welcome. I really appreciate the help there. And I think it was Daniel 11 that we're actually dealing with these prophecies where they're perfectly fulfilled and then everything fails after that. But thank you. And Bill Castle, thank you for that super sticker. I did want to comment one thing specifically when we're talking about Paul. We have these critics of Jesus like Celsus talking about him being born by, fornication, whatever you would like to say, born of Celsus, Panthera, which may mean upon on virgin, or it actually is the name of Roman soldiers, which there was a Roman soldier named that. Either way, it's clearly the heart of Christianity to deal with him. But in the pseudo-Clementine recognitions, there is this conflict, even among Christians, about Paul and Peter. They saw this problem in Paul's letters. Acts likes to harmonize and is trying to say, Peter and Paul were such good buddies that Paul's mission becomes Peter's, and Peter's mission becomes Paul's. So much that Paul literally is going after Jews like continuously, and Peter actually is starting to go after Gentiles, Cornelius. So you have the last guy to be actually telling a Gentile he can have the Holy Ghost and filled with the Holy Spirit here. And he's going, no, this can't be. He's unclean. He's not kosher. And then there's a vision that comes down and wants to tell him, do not call what is clean unclean, Peter. And he's like, oh, snap, my bad. Go ahead, keep eating whatever pork. No, the point is they're trying to harmonize the problems between both people. But the pseudo-Clementine is literally saying, Peter saying, we learned from Jesus himself. And Paul saying, listen, I have this vision. He goes, how do you know that vision was really Christ? It could have been some demon or evil or whatever. Literally saying that about Paul's visions. I mean, there's this problem goes into the 2nd century.
Doesn't Paul also say that in Galatians, if an angel comes down and gives you a different gospel? I mean, you could say that about Judaism, right? If a vision happens that tells you something that different than what you believe. But as far as pseudo-Clementines, isn't that 4th century?
Yep. But there's still this debate going on who's my guy. Well, Peter's my guy. In the late 2nd century, Peter's my guy. We have apostolic succession from Peter. Oh, well, we have it from Paul. Well, why? Why not say came from both of the guys? No,
isn't that what Paul is referring to when he says some of you say you follow Apollo, some of you say you follow so and so, but we're all like he's trying to. It sounds like he's trying to mitigate that though, of trying to say it doesn't matter who you follow, we're all under the same branch here.
It goes even deeper though, because you look at James. James is talking about the faith versus works argument. He looks like he's replying to Romans, because Romans is all it says. It's all about just faith. Forget about works. Faith is all that matters. And James literally says this. He says, you believe that God is one, you do well. Even the demons believe that. He's like, that's nothing. He says, but do you want proof, you ignoramus, that faith without works is useless? He's going after somebody in that he's talking about.
I think it would depend if you agree with the new perspective on Paul enough. If it's James Dunn or E.P. Sanders and T. Wright, they probably would say that James and Paul would mostly agree on faith and works, but the really conservative Christians would not. So it depends on who you're reading there. I know there's been more recent interpretations.
I mean, critical scholars like Bart Ehrman say, no, there's a problem here.
Right.
Well, I was referring to like Pauline specialists, but
forget what they say. What the text says. I'm talking what the text says.
Christopher Stanley's a Pauline specialist, and and he's a Christian, by the way. And I've interviewed him, and he would say, no, there's a big problem. In fact, he goes so far as to say Paul does not believe in a Trinity. He does not believe that Jesus is equal to the Father God. There's a lot here, and he's a Christian. And he said, now I wouldn't say this at church.
Is he Unitarian?
No, he's not a Unitarian. And he says, I would not say this at church, but he's a serious scholar who says this is what the data, like Kip said earlier, the data is this, my faith is this, and I separate them. And they're good at trying to do that in this field. But N.T. Wright and these other guys, James Dunn and all them, man, they marry their apologetics to the data.
I don't think E.P. Sanders was that conservative to my knowledge.
He was pretty.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Or even Raymond Brown was not that conservative as a Catholic. So
what you guys are saying is that the critiques against Paul, there are contemporary critiques against Paul in the New Testament.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of different voices. And that was the miracle that Bart Ehrman said in his Genesis lecture that I've been promoting lately. He said the number one discovery, and he said it real powerful, isn't the Dead Sea Scrolls. It isn't the Nag Hammadi. Now, this is, you can see the gist he's trying to say, is finding out the Bible is not one book. It is not one voice. It is multiple voices, multiple. And if you start to read the literature that way, because he wanted to compare how scholars read the Bible and how people of faith communities read it, you'll realize there's a lot more going on. ScholarVid, thanks for the super chat. Caleb, if we had genuine letter of Paul exposing Paul for being a false apostle, would you still be a Christian?
That's a really good question. So I would say that I would either take one side. So I would either say either Paul is right or Peter is right, and I would say the other one was a false apostle. Or you could try to say that both of them are partially wrong and that they both agree on the course, but they both have, like we use the dominations, right? Where we can say, oh, Catholic and Protestants, they each have something, right? But they're not mutually exclusive, right? So I would probably either take a mutually exclusive sect to say either Peter's right or Paul's right, or I would say, well, they're both wrong and there's the Christianity is something deeper than both of them.
But how could the one that Jesus called his rock be the one who's the false apostle? That would mean Jesus is wrong then. If Paul, it would have to be. He
also denied him 3 times, right? So I mean, I'm not sure that's a good standard to say he's has to be perfect, right?
I thought it was 6 times.
Yeah, but Jesus knew that though.
Yeah,
he knew it was going to happen, so it doesn't matter. He chose him anyway.
Yeah,
man. So at the end of the day, point blank, if Paul was found to be a liar and really was a false brother, would you become a Jewish Christian and follow the Jesus version of Christianity as people would actually?
Jews for Jesus would blow up.
He'd become a Mormon.
I wouldn't become a Mormon.
Marcionite? Wasn't it Marcion who hated Paul?
No,
he liked Paul. He
loved Paul, right? Who hated
Marcion?
Paul?
Would be in the anti-Peter camp. I'm guessing he would.
I would think
take Paul's side. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. He's the one.
This guy's in that camp too. This guy right here. He's in that camp.
Marcion loved Paul.
Yeah.
Jesus hated Paul.
I expect so.
I mean,
the word grace is not found in the Gospels, is it? And that's Paul's like grace this, grace that.
What do you think would happen, Caleb? This is a good question before we get to our next super chat. What do you think would happen if Paul was actually confronted by Jesus? Okay, and I know that we read Acts. You think he did confront him. Why are you persecuting me? I'm talking about his doctrines, right? Here you have this Jewish Christianity, Torah observant, do you think he would see Paul and say, you know what, man? Thumbs up. Everything you said is definitely what I was meaning when I was here before I died and ascended. What do you think?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I think if you think Mark is based off of Paul's letters, then you would expect there to be a lot of synergy there. So I'm not really entirely sure. That's a great question to look into, though. I see no reason to think that they wouldn't, just going off the top of my head. I don't think there's an explicit contradiction. I think Paul references Jesus' teachings a few times on divorce and communion and stuff like that. But it's even subtle ways. I think at one point Paul is referring to when he alludes to something like faith, like moving mountains, which is similar to what Jesus says about having faith to move mountains. But I don't off the top of my head see an explicit contradiction to why he wouldn't. I mean, if there was one, then Jesus would probably say, hey, you done messed up here. Because really, Paul only saw Jesus for a pretty short period of time, right? Now, he does say that he had conversations with him in heaven in 2 Corinthians, right? Where he's taken up into the third heaven. So I don't know what conversations they were having up there. But if he came down like the Thomas and they were eating it at a table and stuff like that, I think that'd be an interesting conversation. I'm not sure.
How much you want to bet Paul was a flat earther too?
I think all Christians were flat earthers for a while.
I think wasn't the round earth proven by the Greeks like prior to Christianity?
Yeah, but
not everybody.
I don't know.
Yeah, but Paul didn't believe
how
Greek
far and
people.
wide that information traveled.
Yeah, I was talking to Carrie about that. It like the smart people knew the Earth was round, but a lot of
not Paul.
A lot of religious people.
Not true.
No, you're probably right.
Not Israel.
Right.
Because if Paul's starting to layer heavens, like first, second, and third heaven, my guess is he viewed the Earth was a plate with turtles holding it up.
Yeah, he had a very, very
You know what's funny? You know what's funny about Acts though? Is Acts when he talks about Jesus coming down and telling Paul, "I'm the Jesus who you persecute." It specifically mentions that the people who Paul is with can't see him, so he's not literally coming down. It's just Paul seeing things. Otherwise,
they hear a voice, though, right?
No, they don't see anything. They just see.
They hear a voice.
They
hear a voice.
Okay, but then
later they see, but they don't hear anything.
It's confusing as to whether they can see him or not. It's not made entirely clear. But there's something that they can perceive, but whether they hear it or see it, or whether they can't, it's not clear because the language is confusing.
Dr.
So we just.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Doctor.
I was just going to say we've destroyed Mormonism, we've destroyed Christianity. Should we move on to Islam next, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
We should talk about how Muslim or Islam views Paul.
Oh yeah, they think he's a shyster too, right?
They do, and they think that he corrupted the teachings of Jesus.
Makes sense.
So if the Jews think if the Orthodox Jews think Paul's a shyster, and if the Muslims think that Paul's a shyster, and if a lot of atheists like us think he's a shyster, Caleb, the evidence is in. He's a shyster.
And he's arguing with other Christians.
Yeah. Thinking and demonstrating, I would say, are two different things. So
and that's the earliest, only firsthand testimony for Jesus that we have from a guy who most people think are shysters. Or he's a shyster.
I mean, the pagan Christians loved him, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's the guy who said that they are Abraham's seed. He's the guy who opened the door to say, you're chosen, you're elect. But by the way, this was only a Jewish thing before, but you're one of us now. Whoa, you just gave away the most special, sacred thing to people who weren't your identity. They didn't have to convert to get it, meaning chop off the tip of their penis. They didn't have to do any of that, and they got full access. I mean, that sucks.
Paul was selling warm and fuzzy feelings, and people were buying it up.
Doug, what exactly is a shyster?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the German.
What exactly?
A crook, a car salesman.
Yeah, used car salesman.
Yeah, just like saying what people want to hear. Yeah, sorry. Do you guys not know what shyster?
But that's exactly what Paul said Peter was. Paul said that was exactly what Peter was. He acted one way around the Gentiles at this point, and then So who do we believe? Who's the real shyster here?
Paul says that about Peter, and then a couple of pages later, he says, "I'm one way to the Gentiles, and I'm another way to the Jews." So he literally pulls a double standard right in the text.
Who do we believe? Kevin Hogan, thank you for the super chat. Seriously, big super chat. Thank you. Has Kip validated the Luke prophecy fulfilled with Old Testament readings in Old Testament in Dead Sea Scroll? Hard to understand the question.
After I respond to this, I'm gonna have to run because I gotta.
Are you going on
because it will be a
triathlon?
bad response?
No, it's because I promised I'd go on a bike ride with my wife, and my Belgian Malinois needs a run too. So
You have a
so you
Belgian.
have to go.
What is it?
Malinois.
Well,
Malinois?
those are the like the German Shepherd sort of cousins, right?
Yeah, the one,
Yeah,
but they climb trees and jump rivers
and fly planes.
crazy.
Yeah, they're very smart.
Yeah, very, very. But you got to keep them moving all the time. So
Yeah.
So I'm looking at, does this? So is the question asking if I've checked the passages in Luke where Scripture cited against versions of those texts in the Dead Sea Scrolls? Is that how you guys are understanding it?
I think so.
Old Testament readings in the Old Testament and Dead Sea Scrolls. Huh. I'm wondering if it's quotations or I'm not really sure the question. Kevin, if you're in the chat, clarify. If you get the gist, you could start, and I'll see if Kevin updates us on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
Kevin,
I can if I'm understanding it correctly, I can say, I mean, I haven't sat down with Luke directly and like gone over everything and compared it with texts that we have from Qumran. Something that I will add to that, though, that I think is kind of cool is that there's I'm gonna get the passage wrong, but there's the story in Luke where John the Baptist is in prison and he sends some of his followers to ask Jesus if he's the one that that the scriptures have prophesied about, or if they should look for someone else. And Jesus responds and says, he says, tell John, the blind see, the lame are healed, the dead are resurrected, and the gospels preached to them. He gives them a list of various things, and this is a conflation of, like, I think it's 3 separate texts from the book of Isaiah, all in this one response. And one of the really cool things in the Dead Sea Scrolls is there's a manuscript, I think it's 4Q 521, the so-called messianic apocalypse, I think is what it's called. But this exact same conflation of passages from the book of Isaiah appears in this one manuscript as a messianic expectation. So that's kind of cool, but that probably didn't answer your question. I'm sorry.
He said Luke seems to quote prophecy after prophecy.
I think I get the question. I think
He
he's asking-
does.
I think he's saying, are all these prophecies really prophecies, or are they just saying they're prophecies? Are they found in the older text?
Well, I mean, within the Second Temple Jewish milieu, everything is a prophecy, right? This is just the way that Jews read Scripture at the time of Jesus. This is all coded messages about what's happening to us today. So they're mining the text for anything and everything, like even just the most arcane details that seem completely divorced from its original context can work as prophecy. So I mean, virtually anything within Scripture can be marshaled into something about us today, something about Jesus. So
that's why this goes back to Paul, and something I just want to make mention is, if we talk about if he's bad or has ill intentions or not, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe this guy has multiple motivations. I mean, it's that's the thing, Hard to know.
And and something that the Dead Sea Scrolls show us is precisely this, where the same passages or, you know, additional passages from scriptures, passages from the Hebrew scriptures take on this life of its own within a Second Temple Jewish milieu. But I'm gonna have to run, gentlemen.
Thank you, man. Yeah, let me
this was
just
fun.
go subscribe to his YouTube channel, everybody. It is Kip Davis. And you'll be on soon to debate upcoming topics on the channel. We're going to be dealing with Isaiah. Who wrote Isaiah?
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll watch that because I remember I spent a good time looking at Daniel and Isaiah's authorship because I know that was really contentious. So that'll be really interesting. And I'm actually agnostic on both of those, so you can try to push me over to your side if you want. So
it'll be cool to see too, Kip, because so much there's a foundational part of the Book of Mormon that relates to Isaiah. So it'll be interesting.
Oh yeah, really, eh?
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
cool.
Like I said, we'll see how it goes. So, anyways,
be safe, brother. Yeah. Till next time. Thank you, Kip. All right. Next one, we're gonna get up here. We're gonna later, brother. So the next one we're gonna do is Flip Flopsky. How does the brother of the Lord disappear from history?
So you mean James?
Yeah, James. I mean, you know,
he's in Josephus and Hegesippius, right?
Yeah, he gets killed in Josephus.
Yeah. I think that just like all things, they evolve and move on into new ideas. And if James is teaching a more Jewish Christianity version early on, that goes extinct as well. That's probably something that if you look at it that way, Pauline version or something that's opening the door to the broader audience that's going to also get along with people of both groups. You mean you can eat with me? Oh, you can eat with me. This version of Christianity lets you actually talk and eat and sit down and come into my house and stuff like that. There's not anything that's unclean. Oh, that's interesting. So I would say that would be the reason maybe his movement or the movement that James may be teaching dies out. But we see hints of it in Acts. We see hints of something there, a Jerusalem church.
I think that's more historical than people give credit for, because I think if his death was big enough to get into the writings of Josephus, then obviously he was doing something where people knew who he was. They knew his, you know what I'm saying? They knew.
Yeah. And if it was the Jerusalem church, when the Jerusalem temple collapsed and the crushing of Jerusalem, so did the church. So there is the end of that movement.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Well, there were still bishops in Jerusalem, but they just weren't. It wasn't structured the same way. I mean, because of course you had the dysphoria and stuff like that. But there is, I think Eusebius talks about a chain of Jerusalem. Pine Creek's gone.
Okay, Canadian Catholic, thank you for the super chat, my friend. Pine Creek, do you think condescension is a virtue?
I'm debating him, by the way.
Oh, when? What?
On the 16th on Non Sequitur.
On what topic?
Topic is Christianity logical?
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, is it logical? I mean, that's a good question. Is it? Should everyone just? Is it logical to the point that everyone should just convert right now?
To be honest, I feel like debating Canadian Catholic would be a
bad idea.
An act that I don't know if even I have the patience for. But we would have to see how that would go. Just because I've seen his interactions with other people, and it's something all right.
I know.
But yeah,
people so far like, you shouldn't do this, bro. I'm doing it.
I was impressed that he debated Carrier on the historicity of Jesus. I'm like, what are you like? All the people that do that, I was like, not no disrespect to him, because I know that I think he is a really intelligent person, but it's just more of the demeanor. But I'm sure I'm not saying anything new. So
let me say this. I want to thank you all for coming on. I could have done this earlier, but we had a few super chats. Everybody had to go. It's been a fun Sunday, and having you guys come in. Caleb, thank you for dealing with the constant criticisms that come.
I'm in the lion's den. I know it's all
you are in the lion's den, but dude, at the end of the day, if we weren't talking about this, it wouldn't even be a thing. Like in real life, these aren't even issues that I bring up with people that I'm hanging out with or that I'm going to lunch with. there are topics that get brought up from time to time, but you did decide that you wanted to come in here, so you can only blame yourself for that. Okay, you can only blame yourself. So
although if Calvinism is true, God made me will it, so technically it's his fault that I wanted to come here. So
that's true, and it's not my fault either. In fact, I don't know why he's blaming anybody and actually punishing anybody at that point. But
right,
yeah, that's cool.
He does what he wills, so whatever, right?
Yeah, NPC characters.
Yeah, I had one more random thing to ask, but I didn't know if you were if you want to wrap up the show, you can go ahead.
Go ahead and ask, and then I do want to get Gary to do an out plug as well, and Neil and everybody to plug their stuff. I always do it. It's my tradition.
Yes.
Yeah, no, you're good. No, I was just going to ask, like, is it in terms of methodology? Like, I was thinking, I don't think this has been done before, but do you think it would be interesting to see, because people, of course, debate as far as New Testament, is it reliable, is it not? Do you think it would be interesting to literally go through verse by verse in every gospel and take everything that has external confirmation and see that versus everything that has seeming contradictions and do that, and almost tally it up where it's numerical, where you do like, of the claims that the Gospels make that can be externally verified, this percentage can be confirmed to be true. This percentage can be confirmed to be contradictory to what we know. This percentage contradicts with other Gospels. This percentage, do you think that would be a really interesting way to do it, to see? So we're not like speculating in these really broad terms. I think putting a number on it would be interesting. I wonder if like someone like, Carey or people who are big into Bayes would want to do that, because I know he's big into numbers and that, but I didn't know what your all.
I would be interested in that, because I've been asked the question of how historical do you think the Gospels are? And I had me, Robert Price, and Doug on, and we wrote it down. We didn't say it. We wrote it down, and we showed our papers, and I had 20%. I just put 20% down as possible history.
That's more than I thought you would put, actually. I'm impressed you think it's that high.
I'm granting it. I mean, I could be wrong, but I have shifted quite a bit over the past, I'd say, 6 months, to thinking there's probably more to it. But yeah, Bob put 5%. And Doug had 20% as well. So it was like, whoa, okay, hold on. But it'd be cool to see what is verifiable, and there'd be a lot that's not. A lot that's highly theological, and the better.
Most of it can't be verified either way, as far as like it can't be proven or disproven. So we're just saying we don't know. I was referring, like, something that would be verifiable would be like the pool of Bethesda, right? Something John mentions that we found it. Something that would be unverified, or that would be seemingly unverified, would be like the census in Luke, for example, where it seems like there's a clear, if it contradicts other sources we know or something like that. And then, you could do that with or without harmonization. But I'm actually surprised Bob Price thinks it's 5. I would ask him what the 5% is, who doesn't think Jesus existed. Like, what part of that 5 is true? Is it is the disciples? Is it, I that's interesting to me.
Well, I mean, when I say that 20% of that includes references I think Luke knows of Josephus' historical work. So, like, I'm granting that there's stuff that I think we can verify by looking at Josephus, and I do think that Acts is aware of Josephus, which would put me at a later date. And as Mike Licona called it, fringe, I asked him, David Litwa, on record behind the scenes, right? Because Litwa's not interested in doing the whole apologetic, in-your-face debate type stuff, but he was like, fringe, this is the data. Like, he can call it whatever he wants in his community of consensus, Christian scholars that want to say, oh, Acts is not that late. And he's like, but no, this is where the data is heading. And so when people are holding on to these older ideas and not checking out the data and actually going where it's going, then of course you're going to have people. Even Bart Ehrman takes Acts in 85, Luke Acts in 85. And he's still regurgitating something that's in the 80s, that's been postulated since the 80s. And I know students, Ian Mills, other academics who were taught by Bart Ehrman, who said Bart is behind the curve when it comes to dating these texts. These are his own students who would say, sorry, he's behind on these dates.
I don't disagree with you that Bart Ehrman is behind on a lot of scholarship. I don't think you and I would disagree on that particular aspect. No, I'm getting that from, I think, I don't know if you probably haven't read Craig Keener's commentary on Acts. I think it's the largest one ever produced, 4,000 pages, 4 volumes. Probably, I think he's written and cited more on Acts than anyone else has. And I think he actually does a head count. And I think this was written in like 2011, 2012. So it's a decade out. I don't know how much has changed since then, but I think from when he was doing the head counts, it was about 10% dated Acts to like later than, or to 2nd century or later, give or take, as far as like of people who've written on it. I don't know what that number is now, but 10% isn't like virtually no one. It's still a sizable minority, but it's, but I think you and I both agree that picking and choosing head counts is not going to solve
But
an
that's
argument.
why I asked Mike Licona, hey man, how many of them are Christians? You don't find many atheists going to get their PhD in New Testament studies, or like, it's not a common thing. So most people who are doing this are doing it because of their tradition, their faith. They're going into seminary and then they decide they're going to be an actual scholar in the field or whatever. They're not typically people who are going to start with this idea of, well, I don't have a belief in this, and I'm willing to literally say, if it looks like Josephus was used in Acts, which would make the reliability of Acts a lot lower for what is historically reliable, in the sense that Luke is really writing history he actually knows and not history he's reading from Josephus literature, then that would be a huge red flag. And this is the stuff that I love to dig into this, because it's like, dang, you can look and there seems to be a genetic connection. Why is Acts mentioning stuff that is irrelevant? Like, that's what Steve Mason's pointing out, like, irrelevant to the story in Acts, but it is relevant in Josephus. So he points out, like, why is he mentioning these things?
I was going to, because I know I showed you one of the blog posts. I really want to do something on Acts and Josephus someday, just because I think, like, from the arguments I've seen, and what, like, one of the things that bothers me is that when you look at, I think you and I would both, well, I'm sure you and I both agree Luke used Mark, right? Mm-hmm. Yes. No, yeah. And he may have used Matthew, or at least he shared sources with Matthew, whether it's Q or whatever. But when Luke uses sources, he quotes them almost verbatim, changes maybe a few things here or there. But I think if you took a verse where Luke and Mark agreed on, and then you took something Luke and Max agree on, Luke and Josephus agree on, I think the verbal similarities there compared to how similar he is from them, I think I would be surprised that Luke isn't quoting Josephus virtually verbatim, when we know he does that with his other sources. So the prior probability, if I was making predictions as to what I would, if you gave me Matthew and Mark and I say, okay, I know Luke used these, and then you said, okay, without looking, if you're going to predict how he's going to use Josephus, how would you predict it? I would predict that he would stick closer. And there's, of course, once you get past Acts 13, he gets a lot of things right that's never even mentioned in Josephus. And I think that doesn't have, you'd have to add on an additional hypothesis that he has another source that we don't have. And then, I'm just giving you the short reasons as to why. I also think there's a good chance First Clement could also be quoting parts of Luke and Acts, or at least referencing them. And if that's in the late 90s or early 2nd century, I don't think you could do off of that. So I'm not going to give it a whole argument there, but I personally don't think. I think the only things that I've seen are that Luke and Josephus match up on certain details. Sometimes the verbiage is very similar. Sometimes the order is very similar. But of course, Luke disagrees with Josephus on lots of things. He changes the census. He gets the rebellion wrong. So it's as far as how are we? Luke is sticking closely to Josephus, but then changing him for very strange reasons. And there's, like, sometimes the changes don't make it. Like, Josephus will say 40,000 men followed Thaddeus or whatever, and Luke will say it was 3,000. And by the way, I think Luke is actually probably closer to the truth, because Josephus is known for exaggerating numbers, and that's 3,000 is a more realistic number than 40,000. But it's like, I don't see what is the theological significance of 3,000? Like, it doesn't seem any obvious reason to do that. So I just think that trying to understand why Luke is changing certain things here but not changing otherwise, I think it just gets kind of subjective. And then we know that Josephus and shared oral sources with God. Like, for example, Josephus and Mark both mentioned John the Baptist being beheaded by John the Baptist, by Herod, right? But I don't think either of us think that Josephus or Mark were dependent on each other. They probably had shared oral traditions. Right. So I don't know why you can't say that could be the same with Luke. If we know that Josephus that's why I would read Purvo, his commentary particularly, because Purvo to me went into this, just absolutely blasted through the book of Acts and looking at this material. And when you walk away from reading Purvo's commentary, you're going to be sitting there going, it's more than just this argument of doesn't know of Josephus material. Of course, he's an author. He's a creative author as well. So is he literally a Xerox copy, or is he not an ingenious author who writes in a high Greek, and he's sophisticated in the way he does this? Or at the very least, Josephus is writing this in 93. So we would need to force it to be somewhat contemporaneous to this. Or are we going to argue Luke's writing this material actually before 93 AD, which seems even more improbable to me? This is why there's a lot of data that starts to collect and go into this as to why. Even the Jews that are kicking Christians out, like, people make this argument with the Gospel of John, when John is seeing these Jews that are kicking Christians out and saying, you're not a Jew.
Like you're not allowed in our synagogues. This happens in the 90s. We know that happens in the 90s. Like, we know when they said, you're not welcome in here anymore. Like, they've laid down this law. There's a lot of little anachronisms that we might look at and go, what the heck? So maybe people added it later and Luke had an earlier version. I don't know. There's so much here to get into, but there is this idea that the church fathers changed what we call proto-Luke, that was a Marcionite version of the gospel. And then it ends up becoming rewritten, sophisticated, rewritten. And Marcion even complains about this, saying, you guys rewrote my gospel. Now, of course, the Orthodox Church wants to pretend Marcion is the one who did it. But Marcion saying, no, you guys did it. And having Litwell on to talk about those things was fun, to
so
hear
it's
a different angle.
versus it's his word versus their word as far as who changed what.
Right.
Yeah.
And who do you believe? Like, where do you stand? I mean, the guy was written out of history. Sounds like a political propaganda machine as to get rid of these Gnostics or these people who have tendencies to go that way. And
you don't even have a name for the Nazi preacher. He's nameless now. He's been deleted from history.
I just think that whether that's true or not, even if the Orthodox Church was right, if you granted that, man, they did they're damning Origen.
Right.
The
I
dude
like Origin too.
I know.
He's my favorite church father.
So what the heck, bro? Anyway, I gotta let you guys go. Please plug your channels as we're on our way out. We'll start with you, Caleb, since you've been talking with me the most here.
Yeah, just Proselytize or Apostatize. It's a podcast I co-host occasionally, so check that out. He's posted it before, and thanks for having me on. And as always, even though we disagree, we're still good friends, and I think all these guys up here are really cool. So thanks,
man. Thank you, Neil.
YouTube.com/Gnostic Informant. Go and check it out. Just dropped a video with Jim Majors this morning. A lot of fun stuff about the early Gnostic sects, like from David Litwell coming on. Dr. Bob comes on a lot. All the good ones. And you have just attained true gnosis.
Gary.
Topic discuss. I'm on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. But I'll, like you said, Derek, I'll talk about most topics that people ask me to review, but I have a tendency to enjoy talking about politics, religion, economics, and science and medicine.
Well, please subscribe to my friends, all of them, and let's carry this conversation further into the future. I wanted to hang out with my MythVision family, let you guys know, everybody, I love you, and you're not alone. Real quick, I do have the Patreon. There's a lot of content on here that I have not made public. If you want to go support it, and I'm working right now. I did one with Semka, so the family tomb of Jesus. We talked about that. This is also another video I did with Bart Ehrman, where we actually talk about the resurrection and this end time scenario. Of course, I think that there's something to be said about if Jesus rose from the dead, but the actual final resurrection hasn't happened yet, then how do we know Jesus rose from the dead? There's a lot of interesting angles to approach it. Late Gospels, fellow prophecy. So these were actually questions that were asked from our Patreon members. And of course, it goes on and on. There's so much that I haven't made public. Consider joining that. And thank you, everybody. Thank you all for joining. Let's do this again sometime. How's that sound?
Let's do it.
And don't forget.
I love it.
We are MythVision.
Don't any of you have the guts to play for blood?
I'm your huckleberry. That's just my game.